Okay, let's roll. This is a DMC podcast. For people that know what DMC is and for people that don't know what DMC is, but mostly for people that know what DMC is because I have two very special guests today, tonight, whatever time it is you're watching this shit. The first guest, for us is Blowhard. Say hi, mate. Come on.
Hey, what's up?
And the second guest is DelusionaryKiller, also known as DK.
Uh,
Yeah, both are probably the most, well, if not the most, maybe the most experienced players on the scene. So they know a lot more shit than I do, even though I know a lot more shit than pretty much every average other player knows. So yeah. Okay, guys, a bit about your personal background, about your feelings towards video games, what made you stick with DMC, and what kind of games you normally enjoy.
I guess I'll go first.
Sure.
yep.
Well, DMC, coming to DMC was a matter of every other game sort of failing to entertain me. I played a lot of games and none of them were hard enough, basically. And I played a lot of Dark Souls before that, but you can only go so far in that and impose so many challenges on yourself before you're like, okay, this is kind of arbitrary. So I really started getting into DMC by going back and watching all of the true style stuff. And I guess I had played it a lot when it first came out, but only really got into it again around like 2011. And yeah, then VST started up, the V style tournaments from which are based on the true style tournaments from the 4chan VG crazy boards. And that's sort of sent me down a rabbit hole of continually wanting to improve and researching and finding out about players on Yuku and Nico. And here I am in a podcast.
Well, for me, I just I never really like when I was young, I kind of grew up in a lower income household, so so I didn't really have any consoles at the time. I only really played when my friends came over or something. So yeah, whenever I could get my hand on a game, I really played it a lot. It was like crack for me. But yeah, when my older brother got a PS2, that's when I started to play Don't Make Cry. I think it was the first game he had. Yeah, I think he just got it because it was like a metal looking font with a metal looking title, and he um, so he owned the PS2, so sometimes I would have to ask him, "Hey man, can I play your console?" And sometimes he would say no, so that was annoying. But after a while, he sold it for me for $40, so I bought it. And I
You
mean, I played
bought
a
it
lot.
from your brother?
Yeah, $40. It was about $40. It was like a few years afterwards. But yeah, I when I was younger, I would play really any game for a long period of time. I think the first console, quote unquote, was the PSP that I had. It's I've had like 10 or 20 games, so it's not as much as most people, but the few games that I did have, I just played them and tried to unlock almost everything.
Sounds like
Uh,
DMC just saved your childhood.
uh, uh, yeah, I'd say I don't know, man, because before, as I said, it was like so I never really had consoles, so I actually played outside like a normal human being, and now I'm just like stuck inside all day,
So,
playing DMC.
or they destroyed his childhood. One of those.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had a childhood until the teenage years kicked in, and then I started to play Devil May Cry a lot. Uh,
but I mean,
yeah,
like,
so
it's been so many
what
years. What made you stick to
what
it?
made me stick? It was
Yeah.
I don't know. I just like liked playing the game. At first, I just like played it because I liked to do it. I played Mission 20 all day, every day. Yeah, I even like one time my cousin gave me $1 if I beat the boss, and I beat him with the super costume. But yeah, then I saw the combo videos and shit, and I was like, oh crap, you could do all this stuff in the game, and so that was sort of my motivation to be like those guys. And yeah, yeah. Once you started to get good at it, then it's almost addicting. Once you You're like
Yeah.
in control. It's like an instrument. I guess like in the first few years, it's just like horrible. But once you start getting into the flow, you could do whatever you want.
DMC and
So that's
music,
what I say.
it's really like DMC and music is such a good comparison. What about DMC series in general? Like, what guys can you tell us? Well, not us, the viewers that are not familiar with DMC, about DMC. Especially how it was meant to be played initially, how it became a thing, and how it ended up being played by all those guys because it's still active after, well, almost, I don't know, 10, even more years.
Yeah, I've thought about this a bit, why, like, especially Devil May Cry seems so different compared to games like Bayonetta or God Hand, or especially a lot of like new Platinum games releases that have like a lot of intricate stuff, but they sort of, I guess, impose a specific way of playing. And I think what separates DMC, especially from other action games, is that it simply has all these systems built in place, but it doesn't really incentivize how to use them, really. I mean, you obviously have some, like you regain DT orbs from being stylish, or, you know, there's certain sequences you want to do to get more orbs or things like that. But it's definitely not as railroaded at all. They simply built kind of a lot of systems and let the player do what they will with those. And because it's so ended, it ends up with a lot of interesting glitches like jump canceling or guard flying or things like that, because they don't really try to railroad the direction of these systems, if that makes sense.
So the point is they
Yeah,
just build the sandbox and let others play in it. But the
Right,
sandbox is
right.
not limited to the sense to the extent that other sandboxes are limited, so people are still into it because it's just so damn deep. That's the point, I guess.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay.
And over time, the systems just get weirder and more abstract. And I don't think they could have possibly imagined where, you know, both games that people really play in the series have developed to.
it's no matter what game you play, you're bound to have like certain restrictions. But I think DMC, the series in general, has the least restrictive things in there. It's not like, I mean, there are certain elements again that are restrictive. Like you could just go and play Devil May Cry 3, the Arkham battle, and you're just gonna be tied down to one
Yeah.
style, or not one style. It's just like cheap Vergil doppelganger. But yeah, I think the way it was meant to be played, like you could go to the early really interviews or E3 stuff for Devil May Cry 1, and there was always an emphasis on how cool you look. And so that's how stylish you are playing the game. And so over time, as the meta develops, the different people have different views on what cool is. And generally speaking, there's like a certain trend that sort of veers away from the original intention. So for example, there's a style meter, and you could get an SS by doing really simple stuff. But now getting an SSS for the style meter doesn't necessarily mean that you're really stylish in the community's eye. So that's my view.
Although it's kind of beautiful how it works out that originally when people were being quote unquote stylish, their style meters would be at like, you know, B's or C's or D's. But now, because everything's so evolved and there's so much weapon switching going on, being stylish will actually consistently keep you at SSS, at least.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like we've reached the right way to play the game after all this time. It links up.
Yeah, because I think it's because we put in so much variety that the game, we just tricked the game into thinking we're doing like different sequences
Right.
all the time, but we're really just putting a bunch of moves together, and it's just a huge ass sequence. But yeah, that's
Yeah, but I think personally, I've said this a billion times, I'm gonna say it again. The best way you can compare DMC to anything else is gonna be music, because it's the same shit as playing piano. I play piano in my free time. I pair it with DMC, ironically or not ironically. It's just, it has the same feel. The moves are pretty limited. I mean, people are gonna argue with you that they're not limited, but they're still limited compared to I don't know, real fucking life. But you are infinite on the scale of these moves, and what you do with them, the way you link them, is what creates music in real life and what creates a wonderful sequences in DMC. And those sequences obviously keep the scene alive for like, I don't know, 10 years, more than 10 years.
Oh yeah.
I guess that's why we get such a lively community of people that just generally enjoy being creative and exploring their potential. That's just my vision of it. That's how I see it. What do you think, guys?
Oh yeah. And I told you I played drums too, and it is definitely very similar.
I mean, if we're
Like-
gonna do it this way, I'm pretty sure plenty of DMC players have a musical background, so we're not gonna be the only people with some background. And plenty of people, like I've told this to like 5, maybe 6 players, and all of them agreed with me, the music comparison, because that's just what it is. The moves are pretty limited, but what you do with them and how you link them. And because DMC doesn't really limit you in the way you link them, and because community constantly keeps evolving, and it's just one beautiful symphony. DK, you got anything to add to that?
I'd say that it's comparable to pretty much anything that has a like sort of mechanical sort of muscle memory skill and creativity. So it's music is the easiest example, but you could pick something else like a sport. So you could see I'm not a huge sport guy, but I know that you could be really creative in certain sports, but it's just there's limitations there. So but I'd say that music is a really easy example for me. The only real major difference is that you can't really, I guess, express yourself like you can in music. Music you could express yourself emotionally, and Devil May Cry is just combos and stuff.
Well, as far as emotionally, that might be hard, unless you go to extremes like Ramada. I get an emotion of sort of craziness from his videos, or someone like Struckow. So like the emotions are limited, but I think you can convey a sense of personality in how you play.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
I think it's a large part of doing that is also relies on the music that you use in your combo video. So like your videos in general. So like with Ramada, he just like uses really aggressive music, and that's really good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really a good point that we're gonna cover just in a bit, because since the game is focused mainly on style, I think we should just define what style is. What do you feel is the true style when it comes to playing DMC? What do you see as stylish? When I'm showing you a video of someone playing DMC, what do you look for to call the person stylish or not stylish? Is stylishness a skill? Is it a skill, or is it something else? So yeah, let me know your opinion, guys.
It's like the spirit of Dante in the form of whatever you're doing.
Nice.
Yes, like when you watch someone, you get the sense they're having fun, but they're also being extremely technical with it, or they're kind of showing off in a playful way. Like it's not just about tech skill, it's not just about practicality. I think some really good players are actually not that stylish. And then maybe some poorer players, or players who aren't like quite up to par, are actually incredibly stylish.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, to expand on it, what's your personal preference when it comes to videos? Would it be combo videos or just freestyle segments? Because I honestly feel like this modern generation of players that are raised by combo videos, some of these combos feel almost synthetic, and they have no feel to them. You just know that's a combo and it's very scripted. It's like, just like I've gave you an example with music, you just feel like the guy is just banging the notes and he has nothing behind it just because he like learned it this way. So what's your preference when it comes to that, and what are your general thoughts about it?
Do I continue on the fine stuff?
Yeah, I don't want to talk I'll go after you. I don't want to talk forever.
Sure.
All right, okay. So for style, I think there's like 2 types of style. Like the first style is like synonymous with cool. So you say something is cool, you say something is stylish. So that's pretty easy. But then the second type of style is more like something that is unique to a player, I guess. Like you could say that this is a style specific for this player, so it's like sort of a signature almost. And so I think that when we're talking about style, there's like two different loosely connected concepts there. Yeah, so what I find stylish personally is something, and I think generally speaking, most people subscribe to this sort of view, is that you want something that is like fast, a lot of movement, creativity counts as well. Yeah, so things like those are really people consider stylish. Also, like stylish finishers, you don't want to finish a combo with an ebony and ivory shot as opposed to a stinger or I don't know, helmbreaker.
Yeah, as far as like trademarks of players, that's an interesting point about style. Because there's certain like quirks I guess I have that just sort of came to me, and I see that with other players as well. Like these little quirky movements that kind of only they do. Struckyle's gameplay is basically just a bunch of that.
Yeah.
Everything he does is pretty quirky and, especially for the time, totally unique to him. He just had a completely unique style. But yeah, Bubble Melody has some things he does that are like that, certainly with Navan. I would say that sort of characterizes a huge part of his style.
Or reversed attacks, or like whipping hits.
Yeah, like the density of kind of more esoteric tech is how I look at Bubble Melody. I'm like, I know I'm going to get a bunch of reversed attacks and crazy shit I haven't seen before, and a really good understanding of just more like non-traditional skills.
Yeah, it's almost like Devil May Cry 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, you brought a really good point. How much your ability to perform, like, to understand how the game is played, plays into your understanding on what others are doing. Because I can tell you this again, this music comparison is not going to die this evening or morning. Like, I can tell you this.
I think it's apt.
I mean, like, if you're going to a piano concert or something like that, it's very different experience if you never touch the instrument or if you try to play it yourself, because you start to understand a lot more of stuff that is happening. And I think to an average player that is gonna watch the combo videos, they're not gonna really spot anything. And for an average player, definition of stylish is just gonna be a lot of movement, and it's gonna be mostly about presentation rather than the actual things that happen. While all of us know, we all know that the beauty in plenty of cases, the beauty lies in just small details that you notice that
Definitely.
some player does it this way. Like when it comes to launchers, it's just, and this is where you spot these signature moves as well, and this is where you kind of feel the connection to the scene, and you like start to understand how different and how similar every video, every player, every perception, like everyone's perception is. So yeah, what's your opinion on whether you basically have to be good to understand what good is in DMC? Because I honestly think that this is part of a really major problem why this game is not that popular. Because it's basically really hard to get into it, and you have to get into it to understand why people love it. So yeah, should take it away.
Well, I have something to say about that real quick. Yeah, there's like layers of, it just goes kind of so fucking deep, because obviously you can watch it and just be like, wow, that's a lot of shit going on. It looks like an anime. Looks like it's going fast. I like this. This excites me. But then there's a level when you really play around with this stuff and kind of understand it, where you're kind of threading all these sequences in your mind, and it is very similar to music when you're able to follow what's being played. Like it sort of tickles an intellectual center in your brain where like, okay, he's connecting that, and I've never thought of that before, and that's an interesting way of bridging those two movements. And oh wow, I'm gonna have to go back and count up those moves and see how he launched there. There is like a much deeper level to style that has to do with like your understanding of all these sequences. And yeah, it really kind of tickles your brain like reading a good book or something.
Yeah, it's for me it's yeah, that's kind of why I don't try to be too cocky about the stuff, because even when I was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I would still find like new stuff in the same combo videos that I was watching like for a year or so. And
Right, right.
yeah, like there's like these very little like things. It's almost like again, like with music, you will listen to the same music over and over and over again, and if it's really complex, the more you listen to it, the more beautiful it gets sometimes. And like sometimes you could it's easier to follow, and now you understand what like little parts that like completely flew by your head beforehand now are very apparent, and that even the very small parts sometimes make the whole combo video look pale in comparison. It's weird to explain, but it's yeah, that like so for me, I try just to not when I see a combo video, I try to respect it as much as possible, or gameplay, because I know that maybe in a few years' time, this combo that I thought it was mediocre was really the best thing that I've ever seen, and it just flew by my head.
Yeah, you know, tragically, I think like a lot of effort put into combo videos gets wasted even on good players. Because I'll go back and watch like something from TST2, and I'll notice like something that Bria did, like in her Vergil entry. I noticed she does some kind of crazy ground JC where she's doing raves and activating blistering swords at the same time. I
Yeah,
believe that's in her. Yeah, yeah. And like when something like that happens and I go back and watch such an old video with something that kind of flew over my head that apparently no one got until many years later, it feels like kind of discovering a gem or something, like a
yeah,
secret. Like, holy shit, I can do this shit that's way old. And I haven't seen it since then. But yeah,
yeah.
so I think even good players, because it's so dense with stuff, sometimes the wildest stuff just kind of goes over your head.
But
Yeah, like
that's the beauty of DMC, isn't it? Because it allows just so much depth that you can just keep rediscovering the same shit over and over, and you're gonna see. But that's the question. That's actually a really good topic you brought up. That's the question of a genius. I don't really want to go full jazz on this podcast, so I'm just gonna keep myself in check. But what do you think, if it's really possible for a player stylistically to please everyone, so that newcomers would look at the video and be like, holy fuck, this is cool, I want to do this. And then the veterans are gonna be, wow, he's so precise. And do you think, is there any player or any potential video you have, or if it's even possible for a player to please both crowds, or like at least look appealing to newcomers and veterans at the same time? Is it even technically possible?
I think, yeah, I think it is. I think by nature it is, because like you could be executing an insane amount of shit, right? And all at once, and it could really look cool, but to somebody who has already played the game multiple times in a row, um, and some of this stuff might not look very impressive, but there still might be certain little things here and there that keep it impressive. Like for example, um, you see like one old combo video, like I don't know, from Huang or SY or something. You see a lot of movement there, and you may not understand what you're watching sometimes. Like I get this feeling from watching certain combo videos where I can't really follow through at the moment what I'm seeing. Like I can't understand it, but I know it looks cool, and once I rewatch it again, I like it gets even cooler. So yeah, that's basically it. It's almost like hearing a good solo, and you don't know exactly what he's doing, but once you listen to it many times over, you understand, and then you start appreciating more. And that's once you start appreciating more, that's I guess synonymous with like high level players seeing that first.
Would you agree with the statement that the magic of DMC generally lies not in the game itself, that really offers you a lot of tools and allows you to be stylish, but it generally lies in the players? I mean, again, this music comparison is obviously going to tell you that yes, this is mostly the players, but what I mean is, can you be really stylish and really appealing to you as a veteran if there's really nothing? Can you be stylish without being overly technical? What do you think?
Yeah, although the thing is that the more, I guess, technical you get, the less you like the less Okay, so I'll give you this one example that there are certain instances, I think everybody gets this, where somebody's really good at playing the game, but then somebody else finds something creative that anybody could execute, but it's just that the very creativity that they came up with makes it like really appealing. And so that creativity, that instance of creativity, doesn't necessarily have to be technical or demanding, yet it's still stylish, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's always going to be difficult. I mean, anything that people appreciate is normally going to take like time and effort. So you do see players who end up doing like really creative boss fights or something, where a good example would be oh God, his name's slipping me right now. This Chinese player who did just a host of extremely creative boss fights.
I think I remember, but I forgot the name.
Yeah.
What's the point of
What
you
was his-
remembering if you don't know his name?
And I think I remember the video, but I
Oh,
was
okay. Gotcha.
No. Okay, but he would basically discover like these quirks in a boss fight. One of them was he was fighting Agni and Roger's Vergil, abusing the fact that Vergil's lower hitbox from round trip and judgment cut would allow him to duck.
Oh, dude, now I remember the what?
Yeah.
Now everybody
was-
remembers this video.
God
Nobody
damn it.
knows his name. Fuck.
Well, see, I'd know if I still
I
had.
remember this exact shit. Ah.
maybe a similar player, I guess, is like Top Reader. How he
Oh, definitely, yeah.
he ducks underneath the lasers using the judgment cut, and that's pretty good. He also uses the lung. I don't even know if it's the lung, but it's the right lung, the blue organ, where you're in the air, but you're still able to do ground moves in the air because of
Right,
how the hitbox
where he
moves,
JCs
and so
on.
yeah. And
It's kind of
you
interesting that you can
match
JC.
that.
Yeah.
You can just mash it out, and it doesn't really require much skill, but it's still creative, and that's I guess answers your question about it being like you don't need to be extremely technical or skilled in order to be stylish.
So it's basically same as in fucking music again.
Yeah.
Right. It all takes time and effort, but it doesn't necessarily take technical skill.
Okay, the previous question, the previous question that I think you missed as well, was the question if there is a genius player that looks appealing to both newcomers, people that don't really understand what the fuck is happening in the video, and veterans, people that understand what is happening. Do you think there is a such player, or is it even technically possible to be appealing to both at the same time?
My answer, if there's a genius player, depends on who DK said the genius player was.
Well, he didn't say, he just went into speculations. So what would be your answer? It doesn't have to be a player, just a general idea, because the thing is, like, let's assume this, for example.
Right.
No, you're watching, like, let's just take this example. You're watching some videos, like, and you're seeing something that you can't even execute properly. And you immediately start noticing these things that just scream that the video is made by a person that knows his shit. But for a person that is newcomer, he just watches the same video and he doesn't even really understand. He has no idea what is happening, basically. And we kind of agreed that for an average player, for a newcomer, to be stylish is basically a lot of flashy movements and just action in the scene. But we know that, well, action doesn't necessarily mean something technical or skillful, and it definitely doesn't mean something elegant. So yeah, that's the question. That's the question.
Right. Well, that's what I was trying to do, and that's why my combo video took so long. I was trying to make something that was very technical, but at the same time had a sense of variety and coolness and like easy to grasp style. That part was mainly in the form of a lot of movement, because even someone who doesn't know the game can understand, wow, he just went from that side to that side, then up, then down, then back, then, you know. But if there's one player who like is a genius of combining those two elements. It actually wouldn't be Ramada, who's my favorite player, but that player is Bubble Melody.
Yeah.
He's uncanny. I mean, even I would look to someone like Bright, who maybe, but even Bright is more on the side of technical skill.
Yeah,
Bubble
yeah.
Melody like doesn't even seem to care. He'll do something that's totally easy that looks cool. He's like the god of DMC3. He combines like all these things that are utterly easy, that are incredibly insanely difficult, and that are just flat out creative, and it's like he doesn't even really have a preference. Sometimes he'll make a combo that's actually very simple, but it's like, holy shit, I've never seen that done anywhere before. So he would probably epitomize that for me.
I'm surprised it didn't go for a like. It makes no sense. You just pick any TST video from Mada and it's like pure fucking beauty, and it doesn't really take much to understand that the guy just knows his shit, and he's just styling it, he's enjoying it. He always feels so naturally, like in everything he does. It's just
definitely, but he's like an acquired taste. He's like this interesting point that really fascinates me and like completely shifted my focus of playing the game to playing it like that. But he's like in this interesting spot where he's really technical, but he's playing the game like someone who's just having a blast. So it's kind of messy, but at the same, he'll always recover from his mistakes. But yeah, he's more of like an acquired taste because it is so technical. But this is the last thing, I know I'm going on, but there's it's actually kind of beautiful. A lot of people miss the subtlety in his stuff. Like in TST4, he's so good at predicting like what the enemy's going to do and turning his reaction against that into something cool. Like a very easy example is if, a sloth teleports and it's going to attack you, you will do something stylish in the space of time where you would have to land in order to not get attacked, or jump up and do Starfall to get away from it and convert that into something stylish. He's like a genius of those sort of moments.
That's why I really mentioned him. It just amazes me. That's why I said it just feels so natural for him that he's just styling. He's just cruising. You don't even feel like he's like investing into it or like it's a hustle for him. He's just like literally a fucking Dante playing DMC, and he doesn't really care. But you mentioned an important name here. You mentioned Bright, and I think if there is a total opposite in a sense compared to Ramada, it's probably Bright, because Bright is often, especially in combo video, he's like so fucking technical. It's like it's so easy to recognize his work, but at the same time, for some reason, I never really felt like the same sense of it being natural as when I'm watching Ramada's videos. What do you think?
Well, definitely. And you can, for some players who like get really mathy, it's not natural. Because you can't. So when you see Bright do these sort of strange stun launches that involve a lot of calculations, or like, stun launches with charge shots or incorporating that into a combo, he's more of like a methodical player. A lot of his combo videos also have a lot of like repeated motions, or like repeated content, which I don't necessarily mind.
Yeah, I would say that they're not necessarily comparable in the sense that for Ramada, he's most known for his true style, like his clearing one room and that's it. Whereas Bright is more known for his combos, and these are like two different areas where in combo videos it's more expected of you to be very calculated, whereas in freestyle videos you're supposed to go nuts.
Although Bright does have that like Mission 17 style through, which is kind of incomparable. Like that's one of the longest missions in the game.
He did it pretty well.
Yeah, that shit is amazing. Although, even in that, it's definitely more calculated. Everything he does.
Okay, let's go with this then. This is pretty important topic, like especially when DK mentioned that you can't compare combos to other stuff.
You could compare them, but it's just there are differences a little bit.
That's the thing I'm trying to get out of here right now, is that what do you think about composition itself? when it comes to videos? What do you think about presentation? Because it obviously plays really huge role, like the music you pick, how well you're feeling, like the mood of the video, if it matches the background music. What do you think about the way that generally video is presented? Because obviously you can go with a freestyle videos, you can go with like room clearances, you can go with combos. All of these are different sorts of presentation, and they're kind of presenting the same thing, the player, but they're doing it in a different way. So yeah, what's your take on that, guys?
It's hugely important, especially if you look at a video like Hell Sloth is Dead. A lot of the reason that video is great, I mean, it's early in the game's development and it showcases every style and every move and a lot of sort of sequences that would become standbys. So that's part of the reason why it's great. Another reason why it's great is the presentation is just so good and clean. It's like, you know, Dragon Force. It was Dragon Force who did that song, yeah.
Damn, I can't rap.
But like symphonic power metal is, you hear that and you say, okay, that's DMC.
That's epic.
That's obviously a very important part of the style of that video, and the shift between, like, you know, Gunslinger and it's a theme video. Even if you didn't know DMC, you could watch that video and get a kick out of it. But whereas if someone watched like my combo video and they didn't know DMC, it'll be pretty damn boring because it's just a bunch of clips back to back.
Yeah. Also how I guess synchronization works a long way, because like there was one combo he made in that combo video, Hell Sloth is Dead, that where there was a doppelganger combo. It was and it synchronized real well with like the drums. I forgot what it was, but it was pretty good. And I think that the way you present your video is really good, or really important rather. Even for somebody like Kale, you could see his for Devil May Cry 4, his emotional double Nero combo video, and it was pretty emo, but it fit the.
Absolutely.
Are we gonna start talking about Kale? Can we just get into Kale?
Well, I mean, if you want to, sure, but
I think Kale's unduly shat on. He's shat on for the wrong reasons. Like, people say, oh, he like JC. That's fine. What's really fucking bad and hilarious is the video editing.
Yeah, like, I agree with you. But then again, the emotional devil video, I think it's the only video with fucking cutscenes that take, like, I don't know, 30% of the video itself. It's the only video where I'm fine with it because it just kind of like fits the narrative and it feels nice. That's why that actually fits really nicely into the topic of presentation, because yeah, I think it actually, like, the emotional devil video, I think it's really well made, and part of why it's so successful, at least in my book, is the reason that it's well made. It's just he picked one theme and he just nailed it.
Yeah, and I mean, his combos weren't necessarily the best. Like there are many other people doing slightly better, I guess, combos at the time, but I think he was overall a good player for his time. It's just that I guess he was like a year or so behind. And I think the main problem was just like his personality, or the alternate accounts that he probably had there.
Yeah, I think the best combo video for its time, and you can kind of see where Kale's skill level is compared to this, is Bria's Combo Mad 3.
Yeah.
Even now, I think that video will always be impressive. But yeah, if you compare Kale and that, and they're contemporary with each other, then you realize Kale's good, but he's not, you know,
the best.
Yeah.
But that's like the beauty. I wanted to give it, like, okay, let's get back for a second. The music thing and presentation. That's the only part where that's the only part where I think music loses to DMC, because in a sense, in DMC you can give presentation, but in music it's not necessarily possible, and well, it doesn't need it, that's the thing. But like, in DMC you kind of need extra tool to compete with music, so you get presentation for your troubles. So yeah, okay, question like that, what do you think makes a complete player?
Well, for me, like when you say complete, I guess like the ideal player, and for that, I would say that it would have to be somebody who's extraordinary for for like every and like every area of Devil May Cry. This is I'd say almost impossible, but yeah, somebody who's extraordinary at one point in every single area of the game that is needed to be, I guess, extraordinary.
So it's
So you
basically
could say,
impossible.
yeah. So you could choose somebody who's a really good combo video maker, somebody who's a really good freestyler, somebody who's like really good at improvisation, somebody who's really good at speedrunning or I don't know, like SS runs. And so I guess that is really difficult to do, but
Well,
yeah,
the Chinese player Zeroer kind of comes close to that.
yeah, I'd say that Schnee almost comes close to that as well. But yeah, it's but usually players are really good at just one area and are sort of mediocre at the other areas. So I mean, for me personally, I'm really bad at like clearing missions and all that. I just suck at staying alive and not taking any damage. But I think my area of expertise is more so like just playing around with enemies and clearing just certain rooms, and that's it. Whereas other players are a little bit of everything. Like even this is going to be sort of separate from Devil May Cry, but I remember VST, like there was this player, Pops. He was really good at almost every single game, every single crazy game. So he was good at Devil May Cry 3, Devil May Cry 4, Beautiful Mo, I think it was Godhand as well.
Beautiful Joe.
Yeah, Beautiful Joe.
Beautiful Mo's the account of Mo.
Yeah. Oh, fuck. I keep mixing them
the
up.
old True Style player.
Yeah, he's good. He's a good inspiration.
Yeah, your style reminds me of his, by the way.
Yeah, I derived a lot of stuff from him. Although I take from everybody, he was like one of the biggest influences for me. But yeah, he was really good at everything. Well, he wasn't really good. He was decent at everything, and even though it's sort of like in many players' eyes, it's kind of bad to be called decent. For his case, he was decent in so many things that I think that in itself is extraordinary. So yeah, that's I guess an ideal player.
Okay, so what would be like the skill in the context of style then? For you, what would you name a skill? Would it be like perfect execution and it would make it stylish, or would it be the ability to just link shit and understand how it works? Because that's kind of a tricky point. Again, we're just like talking about it throughout pretty much this whole thing, is that it's pretty much the same shit in music. The most advanced stuff is not necessarily the prettiest, but then sometimes you get just so advanced that even simple but very pretty stuff just doesn't interest you. So what would be the skill that you would use to, in a sense, measure players in the context of style? What would it be?
I just guess. I think that the lowest sort of common the lowest common denominator, I guess, is like knowing how to look cool. That's I guess that's my lowest sort of bar. If you know how to link stuff together and know how to make it look cool, it doesn't really matter if your technical skill. I mean, it still does matter, but you'll still sort of see this combo and say, well, I could do that easily, but it's still stylish. It doesn't really matter if it's somebody who can't even jump cancel. I think, like, for example, one really good example is I said example twice. There's a Bloody Junk for Devil May Cry 3. This player didn't really, it was I forgot, it was Panda something. He didn't really jump cancel much in that combo video, but because he had a lot of variety, and I mean, it was still difficult to do at his time, but it was still really creative and stylish and really well put together. So it doesn't really matter how technical he was.
Yeah, and it uses some kind of properties of Abyss in a way people haven't done since. Or you did it. That's why I was so surprised.
Yeah, I
remember the next level.
I remember I remember that video, and then I was just like, oh shit, I gotta use this and this enemy. I was laughing my ass off the entire time of making that video.
That kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier about like looking at an old video and like discovering this gem no one's explored.
Yeah, that's why I think it's important to sometimes go over older videos, because sometimes I look back and say, oh shit, I forgot about this. I mean, I knew in my mind that, hey, this is something that I need to keep in mind, but once you start focusing on something like jump cancels and how to jump cancel Ebon and Ivory Raves, you sometimes lose track of that, especially with DT'd enemies, which have like different properties. You sort of kind of lose sight of what's possible and what's not.
I think you actually really nailed it, like really, really nailed it. Because this summarizes my sentiment in regards to some of the players that just get hit and then they just get up and then they continue combo and then they make a video out of it and you absolutely love it. And then there are other players that just can't take a hit, and it's just like knowing how to be stylish, I think actually really, really summarizes my thoughts about it pretty fucking nicely. What do you think, Blowhard?
Yeah, well, things, I guess, developed in the way they did because of the true style tournaments, or like the restrictions on the game itself of not getting hit. If you're trying to SS run something, which is sort of those, there's always been like two sides developing at once, which is SS runs, which have been getting better, and then style, which has been getting better. And I guess they sort of influence each other a bit, and that when people are stylish, they don't want to get hit at all. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. And yeah, like I'm a huge proponent for getting fucking hit all the time. Like I don't mind if someone gets hit as long as it fits with the spirit of the video, and it can be stylish to get hit.
Yeah, I'd say that in most cases, like I would generally like just advise people to try not to get hit. But if you, like for example, in Devil May Cry 4, I got this clip one time where I got hit, and because there's like flipper in the game, which is basically just the sort of trickster recovery move, it looks stylish, and so when I recovered, I was able to hit the enemy back, and that was pretty cool to do. So little things like that, if you could do it, or if you could like recover control, like regain control of a combo once you've been hit, that's really that warrants the hit, basically.
And it also plays into like not playing it safe, because if you see someone who's really good, and they're very technical and they do have some stylish things they do, but they play it so safe, they can only really execute like sequences of movements, or early on, definitely all my VST entries were like that. I played it very safe, and I'd go through like pre-planned sequences.
Yeah, I remember.
So like it's not like, oh, get hit, but it's just don't play it too safe. That's sort of what I like, when someone doesn't play it safe at all and they have confidence. And
that's the difference between like being natural at what you're doing and just being free to do what you feel like doing, being comfortable in the game, and being a newcomer in a sense, I guess, as a person who's just trying to feel confident. Do you think it's a question of confidence? Like being able to salvage any situation in the game decently to make it look stylish. Is it a question of your confidence, or it's a question of experience and skill? Skill as in technical skill, yeah.
I think it's a mixture of both. It's like a first-person shooter game. Like when you go in online, you could be the most confident player in the world, but you're just gonna get your ass kicked if you don't have the experience or knowledge or aim or whatever. But at the same time, you can have all those things and not be really confident, and so you might not take the risk where you could have done something really good. So I think it's a mixture of both. Yeah, it's actually another difficult part of the game, because improvisation is you could be really good at it, like knowing how to do the pathways and stuff, but if you know how to take yourself out of a difficult situation, like say you're dropping a combo, right? Mm-hmm. And then how do you make that drop into something stylish? How do you regain control back? And that's something that I think player Teruta is really good at. He
definitely
influenced me on that.
I think it's definitely just how much you've done something, and how much you've played around with something. Like I only really developed my style when I kind of stopped caring about progressing and was just running mission 6 over and over. So what that allowed me to do was actually get into that zone where I was getting more comfortable and confident and having to recover from things that were awkward. And I think it definitely comes from confidence of understanding all the variables of whatever room you're doing or whatever you're trying to do, and also experience in that like you don't have to show off everything you know in one video. Like
Yeah.
early on, everything was pre-planned for me because I didn't have the confidence to not show off as much in videos. And when you're more experienced, you don't feel the need to do that, and you can be more natural and responsive to the game as opposed to like saying, okay, I'm gonna JC this many helm breakers in this combo. Then yeah,
Yeah, I know that. I know I did the same thing for Freestyle 5. I still
yeah.
think I will do it, but it's a lot less than I used to.
Well, some of that can be really cool.
Yeah.
Like, highlight moments. Like a great example is when Bria goes into like the Guitar Hero split screen in TST3 in her freestyle entry. Like everything's pretty obviously improvised up to that point, but then she gets a lust alone and the screen sort of
Yeah,
splits in two, or one side is these like vertical Guitar Hero inputs.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Comboing on.
That was
Like
good.
some of that can be really cool. But you don't want to do it all the time.
This is actually
So, yeah.
really cool that you touched on this topic, because I actually want to talk about it. When it comes down to a lot of newcomers, I feel like they get trapped in a sense, where they just get overwhelmed with all this tech, and
Oh,
they
yeah, definitely.
just get caught in permanently practicing it over and over. And it basically, like, new players, they become just their combos, their product final, it just becomes very synthetic, and it's just filled with it just feels very scripted. And these players usually are really like scared of letting it go, like you're trying to learn to get your feet in the fucking pool, and they're like, oh no, please, I've just learned this setup and this setup, I'm gonna do it forever. It's like, what do you think about it? What's your advice to newcomers? Because both of you are probably, well, you have a lot of experience, so yeah, what would you say about it, guys?
Okay, well, a player who plays it very safe and obviously is super caught up in the technical aspect, but has found a way to like experiment within that is 475.
Yeah.
What he does is obviously very safe, especially when you watch him do game like real-time gameplay videos, not combos, more freestyle stuff. But basically, like the way he has put his sense of style and creativity is like switching up these JC sequences and doing a lot of unique JCs. So it is still technical, but there is creativity in that. So I guess you could sort of make your lack of confidence into something else.
Yeah, but the thing is,
Explore some, yeah.
the thing is, you have to like discover your style, and there's no way for you to discover your style if you're just caught up in practicing all the tech every fucking time. How are you gonna? Because to discover your style, you have to be open, and to be open, you just have to go free. And if you're not doing a fucking freestyle, I mean, not for the sake of presentation, but for the sake of developing your own style, so you can recognize yourself as a player, you have to just let it go. And plenty of players just get like, they just basically just get lost in all the tech, and they just get overwhelmed, and they just get permanently stuck there. Like you may pick an average player like that, and they will be able to do pretty much everything that you can do in the game, but there's a huge difference between you freestyling and them, and the creativity and your own style and their lack of own style. So that's the question. That's what I want to hear. What would be your advice on developing your own personal style for the players that are just coming to the series, if there are any? I don't know, but yeah.
Well, it takes like the problem. Why this is such a big problem is that it does take a lot of experience, first of all, and by that point, you might have gotten that experience through endlessly practicing JCs, but really just like watch other players and you start seeing things that maybe even they did on accident, and you can learn how to incorporate that. But really, the bottom line is no matter what, you will have to watch a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And, I think that way you could learn or develop some style without getting way too technical or caught in the trap of being technical. Don't just watch like new combos, or new combo videos or what everyone else is doing, or, really explore. And I think you'll find things that interest you maybe more than, DT combo number 7,000 with the stun launch that goes like this. And,
Well, for the point of the Blowhard made earlier, he touched upon how like 475 is more safe, and he is like a lab monster in that sense. Like he, I mean, he's really technical and caught up in it, but he makes his own stuff. So he actually forges his own path with the experimentations that he has done. And I mean, his hands video was insane. Not only because it shows his hand and how like smooth that shit looks, but he does have really good setups. Like he has I think like a shotgun JC, and then he's like just that high enough to where he could do a helm breaker and
right.
enemy. And that is, I mean, I've been messing around with that recently, and that's it's a joy to watch. So he definitely, I mean, he plays it safe, but he forges his own path, and I think that's applicable to most players as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. He, I won't cut you off, but I agree that like his creativity is almost something, despite being a newer player, I believe, his creativity is something that like only really technical people will enjoy. His creativity and his style is actually in like the realm of technical skill.
Yeah, that's the thing about kind of creativity. That's like there's like sort of micro creativity, I guess you could say, that are very like small techniques that are very subtle, and like even jump can, like even where you put the Evan and Ivory shot, like you might put it right before the jump cancel or right after. Something like that small really adds a lot to the gameplay.
Right.
So yeah, as for your question, oh, wait, what was it? Fuck, I forgot. Oh yeah, okay. So introducing the players.
Yeah.
So the thing about I think that it's inevitable that you will have to practice a lot, because if you think about it this way, is that if you just like go into the game and know that these things exist, but you just try to forge your own path just as soon as you hit the game, you'll be experimenting stuff and finding stuff, but you'll be doing that and finding stuff that other people have already done. So in order to just like not waste so much time and catch up to the meta, you want to like watch as much videos as possible, I guess, and take the things that you like the best, or that are within your skill range. So for me, I've always I looked at every like as much as possible for Devil May Cry, but I've always liked, as I said, fast and a lot of movement. And so players with a lot of guard flying, like I remember Zem when I played Devil May Cry 4. He inspired me a lot because he did this zigzag motion with guard flying, and then he followed up with shocking, and that's something that you could see in my really early PS3 Devil May Cry 4 videos. And
old school.
Yeah. And it's and then from that you kind of build your way up. So, and once you sort of like imitate a lot of players, then you sort of get into a point where you're somewhat comfortable with your skill level, and then you start forging your own path. And I think you sort of experiment with a bunch of different things from the get-go, but your experimentation becomes a lot more prominent when you already like imitate a bunch of players already. I don't know. For me, that's how it works. I just imitate as much as possible, take the best things from every player that I watch, and then add my own spice to it, I guess.
Usually there's like some print, like you copy something and you spend a lot of time learning something, and usually there's like some principle underlying how that works.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you can do something completely new with that. For
me, copying is somewhat of a flattering thing. like I think there's a saying for that. I don't know the saying, but yeah, I think in the Devil May Cry community is generally accepted to copy, and to like, because you're taking inspiration from somebody else. Of course, there's like some instances where you don't want to copy somebody, like maybe somebody has showed you some secret super duper CSI, I don't know what, some tech from Area 51, and then you just you don't want to use it into your own video and just like screw the guy who just gave you the tag that he was gonna use in his recent combo video or something. You just want to keep it secret, and hopefully nobody else finds it at the same time. But yeah, generally speaking, like copying somebody else's style is it's not a bad thing. Although it does get annoying seeing a bunch of people do the same sort of combo over and over again. Like imitation is it's flattering, but at the same time, if people do it too much, it gets a bit annoying.
Well, also it's kind of about what context it was used in. Like if someone makes a video where they're just showing off, like, wow, look at this weird thing that happened, like with the shotgun. But then what you do is you just put that in gameplay, which is a skill all in itself to be able to apply like a weird kind of glitch.
Yeah.
And it's the same, like going back to music, like you take the same beat at 90 beats per minute, it's hip hop, and you speed it up to 160, it's drum and bass. It's completely different, it has a completely different feel. So I guess that's kind of a good example of it's really all about context as far as copying stuff.
Yeah, I caught like with Mo, his freestyle 3 entry. I just copied the fuck out of it. But I remember
confessions.
Yeah, but it's not even a confession. I think I made it pretty clear. But yeah, it was Mission 19, a business fight. That's something that I played like when I was little. I played it almost every day. It was really fun. I just enjoyed doing the combos, and I sort of after a while I sort of added my own mix to it. So I just did like sword pierce when the enemy goes down into the ground, and then I just could do thrust kick when the enemy is in the air, and then do a combo out of that. So like after a while of copying, you get bored and sort of do your own stuff, or just accidentally find something and then do that into your gameplay. And I think that's
oh yeah, if we're talking about copying, my whole VST1 entry was completely copied from like a variety of sources, and there was stuff that they did that I didn't know how to do, but I knew how to do something else. But it was kind of all copied, yeah.
Should say inspired then. That's the correct term.
Inspired.
Yeah.
You're not gonna get sued for that, so yeah. should
I use it interchangeably.
Okay.
Well, you know, it's 2017. I think in 2018 we'll have copyrighted combo videos just because the way things are going. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Let's talk about tournaments. Let's start with, I don't know, some brief fucking history of how it all started and how did we get from the game that was meant to be played stylish to a game where a bunch of people submit ton of videos and then other bunch of people just make their votes for who's the most stylish person. So yeah, tournaments, what do you think? What do you think tournaments introduced to the scene? What do you think the impact of the tournaments is? And talk about your personal feelings in regards to that. Yeah, tournaments.
Well, I wish there were more,
Same.
to be honest, because that was a huge motivation for me to keep getting better.
Yeah, same here.
Because you have a deadline. I think that's really important. And there's also the community of like, oh, how's this player going to progress? That's a great, that's really exciting. Because you're waiting for a certain date to like see how people have progressed.
I'm dying to interrupt you, dude. It's like another music.
Okay.
It's another music comparison. Think of it this way.
Yeah.
Tournaments and DMC are like gigs in the music. You just prepare for one fucking day to just kick everyone's ass and
or albums.
Hope people.
You wonder. Yeah, you wonder what your favorite artists are scheming then when they release it. Yep. Yeah, it's really the same with tournaments.
Okay, let's talk about history then, how it all fucking started. It started with the damn TST, didn't it?
Yeah, on GameFAQs, and everyone was like submitting VHS footage and like Tatsumara Black is literally fucking VHS.
Yeah.
I mean, to people that don't get it, like don't understand or don't know the background, TST, like original tournament, is like fucking, I don't know, 10 years old now. So it's like it's basically PlayStation 2 DMC3 fucking era. So most of these videos, even if they're available, and they are available, they're looking really nothing like modern videos where you could just drop shit into Vegas and edit it.
Yeah. I was laughing for probably like 15 minutes straight when I originally read like on Phantom Babies, like his old process for rendering videos. I was just like, holy fuck, that is the most jank, like backwater shit I have ever heard. Like he would record it on VHS and then like rip it to DVD and then do something else. And it ended up looking like it was 6 pixels. And just horribly interlaced and just, you know.
This just shows you how actually passionate this community is to what we're doing. Because this is how it started. It started with fucking 6-pixel videos and bunch of guys arguing who's the most stylish player, and it grew up over the years into more tournaments, even though it's still not enough apparently, but it grew up into a whole community.
Yeah, and by the way, Tatsumara Black's one of my favorite players of all time, so I'm not shitting on him, but it is hilarious.
Yeah, I remember when I watched his videos, I was like, "Oh shit, the quality is pretty damn good." and then I just like a few years later, I'm just like, "Oh shit, that's kind of bad."
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the time, I would actually record. Well, I would rather record from VHS than from a phone.
Okay, what do you think the impact of tournaments is to the scene? Do you think we discovered many new cool players just because they randomly fucking submitted their shit to the tournament and you were like watching this and you're like, who the fuck is this guy? Why is he doing that? Okay, what do you think about
that? Well, the tournaments are kind of a product of how deep DMC is, and it comes like really a time before console internet gaming or leaderboards or things like that, where you could actually compete. So it's kind of beautiful, you know, before internet gaming, people found a way to have some culture through this. The impact has probably pushed the game well past what. And I have to wonder if that has to do, it's a Capcom game, so naturally more like fighting game oriented players gravitated toward it, so it was natural for them to make it a competition. Yeah, I don't think the game would be nearly where it is if it weren't for tournaments. And it kind of makes me wonder if there are other games out there that just, because they didn't have people competing, you know, single player games where they didn't have people competing, if they have as much depth.
Yeah, sometimes
they're just hidden out there, and it was just because the culture never developed that they never got to this point.
That's a very important point, actually, about culture, and I think all these Dark Souls kids should take a note that competition is actually something that keeps the longevity and keeps the fucking game going.
Definitely.
Because basically, at this point, I think, especially games like DMC3, that there's basically no incentive for new players to get into it. And they're just held alive by all the veterans and tournaments and whatnot. And I think DMC and the fact that we're just sitting here right now and talking is just a beauty of how great of a community this is. How much passion we have for the same thing to be basically starting, like doing fucking VHS tapes and shit for 10 years. That's basically what it is.
Well, I mean, I don't know. As far as the community being great,
I mean,
the game actually.
Let me tell you this. Fuck it. Okay. A friend of mine said this cool thing. He's from UK, by the way, if it tells you anything. He said, every place is terrible in its own unique way. The question is whether you like this unique way or not. I think this applies to pretty much every fucking thing in life. It just depends if your heart feels right with this community or not, because every community has its like highs and lows and bad people and good people. It's just, that's the point I'm trying to make. It's the game that unites us, and it's the game, the passion for it that just carries us through all the shit.
I don't want to like roast my fans or anybody.
Do you even have fans, mate?
Unsubscribe.
Subscribers, but the overall impression that I get from the DMC community, if you talk to them, is autism.
Oh God, we just negated that beautiful point.
Let's not insult people with autism. Come on.
Okay.
Yeah, I have autism, DK.
Oh shit, it's alright, Blowhard. I understand you. I don't have autism, but I feel like I have autism sometimes.
That sounds so autistic. Okay, let's stop howling. Let's get back on the track.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
DK, what's your take on tournaments, their importance and history and shit like that?
I'd say that both tournaments and combo videos have had a huge significance. I think the biggest sort of like the thing that started it all mostly was Princess Devil's Hell Equals Sloth. But also the tournament sort of kept it alive. So at the beginning, it was just a few people. I just remember Tetsumaru, Black, Pokey, some other people. It was like 3 other people or something. And slowly it kind of became bigger and bigger. And you kind of see how the tournament itself evolved. Like if True Style 1, it was just like a mission 1 and going through each style. So I guess in that case, it was more of testing each person's skill. So that way you don't have so much like you can't really compare somebody who's doing a boss battle versus somebody who's doing
Yeah, they tried to
mission
make it
one.
they tried to make it objective.
As equal as possible. Yeah, objective. And slowly but surely that sort of evolved. And as that did as well, other games for True Style 4, it was it was all Devil May Cry games until 4. And then VST, it was Devil May Cry plus other games, and IST is just Devil May Cry. So this sort of, I guess, expanded the horizons of different players, and I guess with True Style Tournament 4, it could have influenced both players. Like so, you have mainly it's Devil May Cry 3 and 4, and so you sort of see a player being really good at Devil May Cry 3 and also at Devil May Cry 4, or just like being good with all the styles or something like that. And I guess that will it sort of merged Devil May Cry 3 and Devil May Cry 4 players together a little bit. It could have been that.
That's an interesting point in during TST4, the two games influencing each other.
Before we break into it, okay, let's just leave the tournament history in the past. Let's go to DMC3 versus DMC4, because this is a pretty important topic to anyone who played the fucking game and who has listened to us ramble for like an hour that we haven't touched yet. Obviously, there are two still active DMC games. DMC3 that has been with us for like, I don't know, more than 10 years since fucking PlayStation 2, and DMC4 that has been with us for still a lot of years, but a bit less than that. Guys, I'm not gonna try to start a war, but what's your take on differences between two games and the way they're played?
Well, there's also a very small DMC2 community in China that you neglected to mention, that I'm a part of.
I'm not China specialist. You are. That's why you're here, you know. So to tell me that I fucked up, and yeah.
So DMC2 is kind of the better game in the series, but you know, people aren't coming around to that idea. I keep trying to persuade them.
Do these games, DMC3 and DMC4, play differently?
Definitely. DK could probably touch on that a lot better since he plays both.
Yep.
But even I can see a lot of difference as far as the development of skills in both games. DMC4 is definitely not as focused on SS runs at all. It seems almost pointless to do, to the extent that the DMC3 communities develop. And DMC4 is also a lot more based in kind of glitch tech, I'd say. Whereas DMC3 is based in a lot of really strong fundamentals.
I mean, yes, I'd agree to that extent. DK, what's your take on this differences between games and the way they play?
That's really pretty loaded, because Devil May Cry 3, I guess there's like two. There are obviously differences between both of the games.
Okay,
so
give me a second. I'm gonna break the question even more down. Obviously, the end goal, the objective for both games in the end is to be as stylish as possible. but it's safe to assume that these two games offer different set of tools to be stylish. So yeah, that's what I'm interested in. What is your take
Yeah.
on the different tools? Are they really different, or are they same, or are they same in the nature but different in execution? So yeah, what's your take on that?
Yeah, they're very similar. The thing is that okay, so for Devil May Cry 3, there is a limitation, sort of. There is a lot of variety that you have. So you have 5 weapons, melee weapons, and 5 guns, and you have 6 styles. So, but you don't have access to all of them, and that sort of changes the game. So I guess to the point where Blowhard was making is that the SS run community sort of developed more because there's more strategy involved, and so you see a lot more strategy in SS runs for Devil May Cry 3 than in 4, because in 4 you have all the tools necessary. But for Devil May Cry 4, you also sort of you have to sort of master, like put everything together, I guess. The same thing for Devil May Cry 3, except that in Devil May Cry 3, you don't have all the weapons you have sort of available. So you would see different sort of playstyles within the same character for Dante and Devil May Cry 3. So it just varies with your weapon choices. So you might have Rebellion and Agni and Rudra, and that will be similar, but still different than Rebellion and Beowulf gameplay. And so for Devil May Cry 4, it's you have everything at once, and theoretically speaking, at any time, you would be able to mimic any other player, but it's just your approach to the style. And so, but when you get into it deeper, it's Devil May Cry 4 sort of offers more. It's somewhat different to Devil May Cry 3 in the sense that Devil May Cry 4 has a lot more tools at your disposal to sort of regain control of a combo. So in Devil May Cry 4, you don't need consistency as much as you would in Devil May Cry 3. In Devil May Cry 3, with Vergil, so something like just jump canceling with DT'd enemies is really difficult because they fall really quickly, and you need a lot of you need to be aware of the numbers and the values behind it all, and so you're more restricted. So if you fuck up once, it's really hard to regain control back of the combo or of the gameplay or maintain the flow. But in Devil May Cry 3, you don't have that much of a limitation. And you could go nuts. I mean, just having an aerial launcher is really important. And in Devil May Cry 3, you have release, and that's it. If you do a time release, and you usually access that only through mods, you could do it mid-gameplay. But in Devil May Cry 4, you have Ecstasy, you have for Nero, Roulette, I think it's Roulette Spin, I forgot, and Charge Shot. So those things... Yeah. Help more for I guess that's why that's mainly sort of a difference. There are more subtle differences here and there. For example, with Devil May Cry 4, just Lucifer in general is just an insane weapon. It's not really practical mid gameplay, but in combos it's really apparent that you don't, there's nothing like it really in any other Devil May Cry game.
One thing well, I'd quickly like to add that I think the attacks in Devil May Cry 4 is also pretty limited when you think about it. The way the attacks in DMC3 interact is kind of what allows it to be on the level of combos in DMC4 even without style switching, or like approaching that level. But if you look at how moves interact in DMC4, it's kind of clunky. You almost really need style switching to make anything work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree to an extent, because with like just Devil May Cry 3, you use something like Rebellion and Cerberus with Swordmaster, and that is enough to keep a combo going and keep fluidity between all those moves. But with Devil May Cry 4, if you don't use any, if you're just like with Swordmaster, right, and you're stuck with Swordmaster, assuming that's the case, you can't really flow between all the moves as well as you would with style switching. It's kind of arguable, but it's a bit easier depending on your setup. In Devil May Cry 3, you have more sort of fluidity between those moves.
Right, exactly.
So weapon switching, for example, is more permissible in Devil May Cry 3. You have a lot more fluidity between those moves, but weapon switching in Devil May Cry 4, you don't really have that. So you could do something like Splash, and then you would have to jump cancel into Aerial Rave. But really, without jump canceling, you don't get that fluidity in the air like you do in Devil May Cry 3. You could do without jump canceling a lot of times.
Also, one thing is the amount of moves in DMC3 with like unique applications or unique properties, I think is greater than DMC4. Like flicker or something. There's not really something like that. Like if you look at what's the application of flicker in a combo? Well, you get to be on the ground and also juggling an enemy. The number of moves in DMC3 with unique applications and combos, I think, is far, far greater than DMC4. And that's one of its benefits.
Yeah, I would say that there are, for Devil May Cry 3, it's many of the mechanics are sort of the same, but how they are made, it's like very subtle differences. So for swings, you compare that with aerial rave. What do you get? Like a difference in how the hitbox is created. So with aerial rave, you do it to the hitbox is sort of to horizontally, and with swings, it's more vertically.
Right.
So something as simple as that can do a lot of difference in gameplay. But I think sort of the same for Devil May Cry 4. So you have so you have for Full House, you have a move that is from the air to the ground, and that's a full house. Yeah, it's just a diagonal air to ground attack. You have Helmbreaker, which is completely vertical, and the same thing applies for Devil May Cry 3. But it's basically like a lot of dexterity that you get in Devil May Cry 3 with Rebellion and Beowulf, except that you also have Lucifer. And there's just every move has its own purpose, just like in Devil May Cry 3. It's just that in Devil May Cry 3 it has more variety, I think, in my eyes.
Yeah, or something like Reverb Shock. That's that's not just like a cosmetic thing. That's a unique property. Say, moving forward while also launching.
I don't think
something like that.
Have that at all.
So it's like, it's not just the amount of moves of the weapons, it's which of them do things that would make different combos, I guess.
Yeah. I think these points sum up my feelings nicely, and I believe I'm not the only one. Up until recently, I was one of the few, or not very few people, that generally preferred DMC3, the way it played, as opposed to DMC4, and I just recently started getting into DMC4 the proper fucking way. And I know plenty of players like just prefer DMC3. Do you think there's a separation in the scene? Do you think there are two camps, or they just peacefully coexist together?
There is I think that there's a loose. I mean, I think it's with any community. Like you have, I guess, the arena FPS crowd or the fighting game crowd, where you could sort of appreciate the other game. And with Devil May Cry, because they're the same series, it's a lot more. You see, and for example, on Twitter, you see a lot of Devil May Cry 3 players appreciating Devil May Cry 4 players and retweeting their stuff, and vice versa. So I think they coexist peacefully, but yeah, sometimes they intertwine, or some of them are not as interested in each other. It just really depends on the individual.
Yeah. Like, it's understandable to not like how DMC4 plays, I think.
It's really hard to describe it, but after you spend, like, I don't know, 3 fucking years practicing jump cancels in DMC3, you just get used to it, and your hands feel the right way, and then when you move to DMC4, it's just different. It feels different. I mean, we have plenty of players, Asian players, that never really touched DMC4 at all.
Definitely. I really could never get into it. The whole reason I got into DMC3 in the first place was because I liked the game. You know, I didn't look at it and say, oh, I'm going to get good at doing combos in this arbitrary game. I had played through the game a million times and said, wow, this is my favorite game ever. Whereas DMC4, I mean, like, pardon me for saying, but I think is a very mediocre game. I think it's a huge, just like a masterpiece of a combo, like a combat system. But as far as a game, it's mediocre. It didn't give me like the incentive to really get good at it in the first place.
I mean, maybe you'd share my sentiment, but in a weird sense, DMC3 feels like Japanese arcadey game in a really good manner. It just feels nice. Everything feels just so fluent compared to DMC4. I never really worded my feeling properly towards it. Not like I really like dislike it hugely. It's just never really felt right to me. Do you share the same sentiment?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that you articulated it like that, that makes a lot of sense. DMC3 feels like, you know, a cave shmup or something where everything just clicks. At DMC4, there's like a weightiness to it. Or like when you hit an enemy, it kind of like the enemy kind of goes, and then, you know, it has this weight that DMC3 doesn't have. DMC3 feels like you're fucking playing with air or something, which is great. I don't know, but I know what you mean. It does. It feels like an arcade game where everything you do just clicks and explodes and makes you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I played Devil May Cry 3 for a while before I played 4. I just remember, I think right before going into Devil May Cry 4, I already knew sort of basic sort of DT combo juggles. And so when I came to Devil May Cry 4, I was not only for just jump canceling and whatnot, but yeah, so a lot of aspects of Devil May Cry 4 pissed me off. There was just simple stuff like changing how the inputs for Gilgamesh, or it's like, why did you put draw and straight in the same move, and why the fuck did you have to put it back in the analog stick? And I know why, because it's draw back and moves you backwards, but still it messed me up at the start, and then I was like, oh shit, no hammer. And of course, when I was trying to jump cancel, it didn't feel normal. Then I discovered, okay, I need to get closer to the enemy to be able to jump cancel properly. And so there are a bunch of little things here and there. And now, as I sort of got better at the game, the enemy, like it happens with any game really. Once you get really good at a game, you sort of see the flaws. And for Devil May Cry 4, Blowhard has a point that it's a pretty mediocre game if you just ignore the raw sort of depth that the game has, because just the sheer just like, oh hey, I got Dante now. Oh crap, I have to fucking backtrack the whole game. And it's just like,
I have to play through the game again.
Yeah, and then it's just like for I don't know 6 missions, and then you get narrow back for 2 missions, and the last boss is like crappy. And so there are many instances where I just thought that Devil May Cry 4 fell short, but because I saw videos of other people doing crazy shit, and I think one of the things that really motivated me was seeing somebody's hands video. I was just like, oh crap, this looks intense. I can't wait to get my hands on this game, and I bought a PS3 just for that. But I think, contrary to you guys, it was a good thing that I played Devil May Cry 3, because if I hadn't played Devil May Cry 3, I wouldn't have had the motivation or sort of experience or understanding. Because if I just came in like without any Devil May Cry 3 knowledge, I would have been overwhelmed. But since I knew already how to jump cancel and do basic shit like that, I didn't quit as much. But I mean, you guys, especially you, Blowhard, you know how to do DT combos and shit. So we had different paths.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a risky question of the day for you. DK, what's your preference, DMC3 or DMC4? Because I know you still play both games. What's your personal favorite of two?
In terms of like overall game and how...
No. In terms of your personal enjoyment, what do you enjoy spending time on?
It's both, but the thing is that like Devil May Cry 3 has like so many good moments, not only in just like the combat, but also in just the presentation and how stylish some things look. And then Devil May Cry 3, yeah. So for the overall game, I like Devil May Cry 3 more, but for like a freestyle, I like Devil May Cry 4 just because of how much freedom I feel. Like I don't feel like when I play Devil May Cry 3 and Devil May Cry 4, Devil May Cry 3 always feels a little bit more clunky to me. So that's the difference for me. For me, I prefer playing Devil May Cry 4 just raw freestyle. But if I want to mess around with like for me, I don't know why, but it feels like combos for me. If I were to make some sort of creative shit, it would come easier for me in Devil May Cry 3. I don't know why, and so that sort of gives me a rush, I guess, whenever I'm making combo videos. Well, not combo videos, combos for Devil May Cry 3. But it's really a mixed bag because they both have things that I really like, and things that I don't like. So gun jump canceling in Devil May Cry 3 is like superior in almost every single way, I think. I enjoy jump canceling with guns, and the same thing applies for Devil May Cry 4, but it's just that I don't feel as satisfied as doing it in Devil May Cry 4. And so there's very little things here and there that makes one game for me more enjoyable than another. For me, in Devil May Cry 3, I mean, in 4 is just the sheer speed. Like I just love moving between enemies, and yeah, the speed of it and movement in Devil May Cry 4 I like, and also I think because I have so much options, I could improvise rather easily. But with Devil May Cry 3, I don't really do that. But at the same time, with Devil May Cry 3, it's just like being really tight with your jump cancels. I just enjoy that a lot. And ground jump canceling in Devil May Cry 3 is a lot more satisfying and more. You have more leeway, and it's just a lot more stuff. So it's a mixed bag for me. But overall, Devil May Cry 3 is a better game, but Devil May Cry 4 is more enjoyable to play freestyle.
I've always been, and you can probably see this in my playstyle, and just like the things I like in life in general, is I like things that almost are to the point where they're excessive. So when you see DMC4 and like you try to be excessive in that game, you can't. The enemies die as soon as you feel like I'm doing something. I mean, I know that's a small point, like, oh, their health is too small, but it really impacts like the feeling I get playing the game. Because if I'm going apeshit on a sloth, you know, like ground JCs, there's a point where I'm like, holy shit, this is too much. And I like that. You know?
Yeah, I that's one of the things that really pissed me off when I first played the game, because I mean, again, I was a PS3 player for like 2 years, and I was playing it seriously to learn shit, and it didn't help that the enemies were fucking paper mache. Yeah. So it just GMD basically makes the game good. That's how bad it is. And with Vergil, with 4 Vergil, just forget about it. You need the Cedar must die or something.
Good. Okay, now this is really okay, guys. You have anything to add to the topic of DMC3, DMC4, and scene differences and stuff like that?
I just say that for me, my style's influence for Devil May Cry 3, it influences Devil May Cry 4, and vice versa. Although sometimes it's weird, because sometimes you can do something in Devil May Cry 3, but you can't really.
But
it didn't really occur to you.
That's the advantage you get in being creative and playing both games, is that you can see both sides of it. So I guess there's that.
And the last thing I'll say is, like, again, I say these things about DMC4, but I love when people do cool combos in it. And like Ice Tat Cream's pedal game was like another one of my biggest influences, which also, yeah, it kind of ties into that theme of excess. When I watched that video, there's really like no start or end to some of the combos. I love that.
I think DK said it about his video, like this exact combo. It just feels like he's freestyling.
Yeah.
It's just such a unique feel that you rarely, especially these days, or I mean the days when it was released, it's really unique feel that you can rarely get from watching a video. It just feels kind of like free, you know? It doesn't feel forced, synthetic, or anything. Despite, like, even considering how fucking technical he is, because half of this shit is like really hard to execute. Really hard. And despite of all that, he makes it look like he's just like toying with everything. It's really
Yeah, watching him play is like getting in a car and it just keeps speeding up and speeding up and speeding up, and like it never actually quit slowing down. It just stopped.
I mean, that's another beauty,
because that's what his videos are. Yeah. You know, his videos just like stop.
I agree with you.
An adrenaline rush.
Okay, this is another huge, really huge fucking topic that we have to cover. I don't even know how to fucking introduce it, but let's start with DMC3. You have Vergil, you have Dante. These two fellas play really differently compared to each other. And they obviously have different players around them, different people that prefer different characters. So what I want to talk about is traits. Player-specific traits that are related to characters, or character-specific character-specific traits that encourage, because like both really encourage different playstyles. And what's your take on differences between characters and how they shape the players, the style, the things like that? Yeah, should take it away.
Well, quickly, I'll say my style of playing Dante was very much influenced from how I play Vergil, or what I adopted from Ramada. So that's like an interesting dynamic between how playing one character kind of influences the other.
I think the
Like if I had to choose, I know I'm known for Vergil, and I do love playing Vergil, but I would actually choose Dante because he's not. I mean, there's more you can do. It's not like Vergil's limited by any stretch, but Vergil is difficult.
yeah, the Vergil, the thing is, like, the worst joke I can ever make about Vergil as a Vergil player is that Vergil is just the best of Dante. That's
Yeah,
it's really bad joke, but it is what it is. Vergil is essentially like this is real. I just
Besides God.
I am still, like really amazed by how well they designed the play style of the character to match the personality of the character. Because
definitely.
if you ask me, like, the way you play Vergil, the way I see people play Vergil is just the way the character is. You just fuck shit up. That's it.
Yeah, it's just the intensity.
And Vergil, like, you have to be really calculated with Vergil, and you have to be really focused. And like when you said he's hard, I wouldn't necessarily agree that technically. I mean, yes, he's hard. Okay, fuck, I just agreed. But it's like you can feel that to play Vergil and to look stylish, you have to embrace the Vergil as character, and you have to really like become basically fucking Vergil. You have to be really focused, really technical, really calculated, and then
Right.
you can pull it off. And that's why I know back in the day a lot of people got really turned away from Vergil, especially because like if you're a new person to the series and you get like basics of gem canceling and then you boot Vergil on DMD like mission 1 and you're like, what the fuck is that? How do you even do anything with this? And like
Right.
but that's the beauty of Vergil, I think, that he is like the gameplay, your style, the style you're forced to embrace is basically just becoming a Vergil as in the character. So yeah, continue please. I interrupted you.
Well, yeah, it's so like when you play Dante, it looks like a bunch of very flashy things happening, or uh, Virgil will like impress you doing the same things over and over, simply based on like the efficiency of it. So yeah, I mean, there are ways you can play Virgil that aren't like that. Virgil has a like an incredible sense of movement and variety of movement you can do, and tricky launches with swords, and basically doing whatever you want in the air as long as swords are firing off.
Mhm.
Virgil is an intense character to play. It's all about just being as brutal as possible.
The way I'm trying to put it is that people that you see pick Vergil, like consciously just select Vergil out of two, are often people that are overly technical, overly focused, overly calculated, methodical people that just generally synergize with Vergil's personality. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I would, because
I mean,
his
like,
combos take a lot of effort for not a lot of reward. Small increments in skill take a huge amount of effort, and they're very, very precise.
yeah, I actually agree with you. If you look like at best players that just nail Vergil, like Bright, uh, this fucker is so technical. It's like for an average
Definitely.
player to catch up to Bright's Vergil, it's gonna take years and years of understanding what the hell is happening on the screen and how everything processed. But for him, it's his like nature, and this is the I think reward of it of choosing Vergil over Dante is that you get this feeling that you're like one with your character. I wouldn't say that Dante's gameplay doesn't characterize him well. I think it does as well, but I think it's not to the point with Vergil because Vergil is just like it's just bullseye. It's 100%. DK, what's your take on two guys?
Mm, for Devil May Cry 3,
Yep,
it's
Vergil or Dante? What do you think? How both of them play, and what's your take on people preferring one or the other?
well, but for me, I prefer Dante, but really, it's mainly because I have more to play with. I'm sort of more familiar with Dante because I didn't have Special Edition for I don't know 3 or so years. I forgot how. My memory sucks ass, but yeah. For me, I just there's obvious sort of differences in sort of play styles. So with Dante, you have a more sort of mashy, dirty style that you can't really do the same thing with Vergil. He's really heavy, and so you want to sort of control that heaviness and to like, for example, Helmbreaker for Vergil is like really damaging and heavy. It's hard to jump cancel, but if you could jump cancel it right, it looks really precise, as you guys say it. But yeah, for me, I don't really notice the differences. I just play. It's weird, but I try my best to sort of ignore the sort of set play styles that are for each character. Like for example, with Devil May Cry 4, I kind of dislike the fact that Vergil is sort of forced to not to like walk and instead of like run.
We'll talk about it a bit later.
Yeah, but it's.
I just feel like this is the underrated beauty of DMC, how well gameplay matches the content, the message of the game.
Everything about Vergil is intense and demanding. Like his combos, especially if you're going to use the tutu, require you to actually, get out a notepad or a piece of paper and say, okay, this hits once. And whereas with Dante, you can almost improvise it a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not as so. And then Vergil, I mean, to do anything that isn't just JCing aerial raves, you're putting in dozens of hours. So it's all about this personality who's going to like defer gratification and do something very, very intensely technical. Yeah, it is a good point that, the personalities match the characters.
Yeah, that's just what I noticed. That's what I've spotted years ago, but that's the reason why we're still playing this game, because it's just so fucking great. Okay, let's move to DMC4, not Special Edition, no Special Needs Edition yet, DMC4. We obviously have a new kid, Nero. What's your take on the kid and Dante DK? What do you think about these two?
Well, Dante is just a lot, compared to Nero, is very precise, I guess you could say. He's with Dante, you'll obviously have a lot of finger speed that is required, a bunch of actions per minute. It's just simultaneously happening. You have to know what weapon to switch. With Nero, he's just like simplified. But the thing about Nero is that if you take him to a high level, you have to focus a lot on positioning, and it's sort of arguable because if you think about it, because of Dante's sheer sort of variety, he has a lot of room where he needs to be positioning himself well for certain setups. But for Nero, positioning is really important because caliber is one of the most important moves to sort of master with and so doing something like caliber underneath the enemy and jump canceling on the other side it's pretty difficult to do. It's hard to do consistently. And then you have other things like timing related, like the charge shot. You also have the same thing with Lucifer pins but they're harder to use mid gameplay. So yeah, for Nero, it's based like if we talk about personality traits, Nero is definitely more just by seeing his moves, he's more amateurish. He's more I think punk rockish. That's why you hear a lot of Sum 41 music with gameplay. And with Dante, it's relatively speaking more calculated and a lot more speed and movement.
There are two things I want to address about that. The first one that I really hate hearing. I hear it a lot, and even though I didn't play DMC4 like that much.
Sum 41.
As of now, no. The people say that Nero is easy version of Dante. This is really weird because and it's linked to my second thing that I wanted to address, is that I feel like people at Capcom just sat there and they were like, let's give people something that plays not like Dante. And this is pretty much Nero. And when people say that Nero is easy mode Dante, I'm like, what the fuck? Because they play pretty much fucking completely differently. I don't know.
Yeah.
I never felt like Nero is easy in any way, because if you're doing something, you're obviously gonna push it to the limit, and when you're trying to do extreme shit with Nero, it's not really easy. It's not even close to being easy, especially with retarded hitboxes of DMC4. So
Yeah,
what's your take?
I think they did well considering what they were trying to do with Nero. What they were trying to do with Nero to me seems like kind of imitate God of War or something. But within like that, within the limitations of making a character who's very, very like easy to grasp and understand,
But hard to
they
master.
did they did very well, giving him like a complex range of
Moves.
applications and skill sets. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'd say that Nero is definitely different than Dante, and just how they play. And so, if they say that it's Nero is definitely easier to sort of learn and pick up, so you can easily go through the game with Nero. But once you make the switch with Dante, it's really hard for new players to sort of connect with his moveset.
Okay, let me get this. There's no denying that Nero was shaped in a way to be a tutorial character in a sense. I don't know how to put it another fucking more eloquent way, but there's no denying that he was meant to be more accessible because new players are gonna start the series basically with Nero. The thing is that I don't get is in most cases when people are discussing DMC and when they're daring to say that one character is easier to play than the other, they're obviously discussing advanced shit. They're obviously discussing players that know what they're doing and obviously discussing high level play if you wish. I don't see how high tier top till fucking Mega Master play of Nero is any easier than Dante. That's the thing. I mean, yes, sure, it's easy to grasp and hard to... I'd agree with that statement. There's no, like, denying that Nero is easier to grasp, but it's just I don't feel like at the end they're that much different. They're different in the way they play, yes, but in terms of time investment you need to put in order to master them, I think they're pretty close.
Yeah.
Kind of argue against that just because... The thing is that with Devil May Cry before Dante, they're difficult. If you put time into each character, they're really difficult to do advanced shit. But the thing is that Dante has a more advanced shit than Nero, and that's the sort of problem because you don't really see that many reverse attacks with Dante as you do with Nero. Like you see like high times being reversed, and you see the same thing with Dante, but you see it more with Nero because he has less to work with. And so if you push Dante to its absolute limit, he would probably look similar to Nero. But because Nero is already being pushed to the limit, you see the hardest shit done with him. And so they're definitely, both of them are definitely really difficult to grasp. Don't get me wrong with that, but
I mean, at the end,
Dante, like twice as hard just because of his sheer variety.
Yeah. Well, when you push something to like I run into this with Vergil. Like there's a point where you do run into the limitations of a character, or maybe the character being like quote unquote easier, where that becomes the real challenge, like pushing it one step further than what you thought was the limit. So like even if Nero is like technically more limited, when you have to push past those limitations, like maybe Dante has virtually no limits, you know?
I mean, that's not technically possible because, you know, the moves are limited.
Right.
It's just, well, I agree with you. When you push everything to the maximum, obviously you're going to be, at the end of the day, you're going to end up with limited by the amount of moves you have. But just the thing I'm trying to the thing I'm trying to push here is that if you're trying to be stylish with both, it requires pretty much equal amount of mastery to be competitive against other stylish players, no matter if you're playing Nero or Dante. So it's like, it's not like you're gonna invest 10 hours into Nero and you're gonna be as good as like people that play Dante for 200 hours and you're gonna be somehow looking better than they are. I just don't think the statement, like I've heard it plenty of times, I don't think it's actually really true.
Yeah, I'm mostly gut feelings and very limited experience in DMC4.
Blowhard usually gets his nuts experiences right. Usually. I mean he I don't know how he does it, but he's like he sees a fucking Nero combo and sees somebody rolling with Nero into a combo, and he does the same shit with Vergil.
Do I?
Yeah, didn't you roll in one of your combos? Like it was a test sort of combo that you did. I don't remember.
Oh yeah.
You took it from Nero, didn't you?
Actually, I mean, to be honest, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I'm so unique. But no, I was just thinking of different motions you could do while
Nice.
an enemy was suspended.
Yeah. Okay, so I stand corrected on that one.
Okay. Let's talk a bit then about Special Needs Edition. I know, DK, you're preparing a fucking critique video for like, I don't know, what is it now, a year?
Yeah.
Hey,
A year.
No, it's a literal year.
Yeah.
More than a literal year.
Basically since like it was released, I guess.
Year and a half. Yeah.
Vergil in DMC4 is nothing
oh my
like
god.
Vergil I know from DMC3. Like, it was my whole reasoning to get into Special Edition, to just see the Vergil, because I was like, maybe it will bring me back to the scene. And when I saw Vergil for like 5 hours, I was like, yeah, what's your take on it? What's your take on Vergil? We're not gonna talk about Lady and other crap. What's your take on Vergil? Because Vergil, the thing is, Vergil is a returning character, and plenty of players that have been with the series for like a billion years now know him from DMC3. And when they think like, oh yeah, Vergil, they think DMC3 Vergil, and then they come to DMC4 Special fucking Edition, and then they see this. And this is like half of DMC,
Yeah.
the bad DMC fucking Vergil repo. Another half is like, I don't know what the fuck is it. So I'm just gonna stop rambling and let you guys sort it. Sure.
Well, yeah, like what really just instantly turned me off about 4 SE Vergil is it's like a character who you can obviously do a lot of cool looking stuff with, and you could push like technically, but doesn't offer like any real technical skills or all the cool things he can do seem just kind of utterly arbitrary and clunky, and don't even make sense.
Yeah, that's the
really.
thing that like put me off really. We're just gonna go back to the thing that I've said earlier, is that gameplay of Vergil in DMC3 is much like the character of Vergil, and I think this is where DMC4 Special Edition Vergil lost me, because he's nothing like the character itself. The gameplay of for Vergil is nothing like the character from DMC3.
Yeah, 4 Vergil is, and I mean this in more ways than one, like is like it's some sort of deviant art creation.
Yeah.
There's all these skills that don't really mesh and are just sort of there because it would be cool, I guess, and don't really have much synergy.
Yeah, just for me, it's like a fucking total disconnect between Vergil the character and Vergil. I'm not trying to insult Vergil players. I mean, DMC4 Vergil players, or like downplay. I mean, you can do a lot of shit with Vergil. I have no doubts about that. It's just I just don't feel like it's the same character that I've put hours in, and I just have no desire or interest to just get invested into it. Just simply because the thing that kept me hooked to Vergil in DMC3 is just now gone. So I just don't feel this connection between character and gameplay. I don't know, DK, what's your take on Vergil? Shoot some ideas.
I have my sort of complaints are somewhat different from your guys. Like I don't really care how I think he looks he acts almost like Vergil would act. The problem is that there are certain moves here and there that are just weird. Like for instance,
maybe because they're copied from a fucking different game, like
I don't know, but the thing is that I think that copying from certain elements from DMC was a good thing. Like
are you sure you're saying that?
Yeah, I'm certain.
You wanted the definitive edition too with your manual lock on?
DK is a deeply closeted DMC.
Yeah, we've just discovered this live on the fucking podcast. Okay, Lena, continue. Sorry.
Got hidden tech. Literally, I'm not even joking. That's how how desperate that game needs. Anyways,
I mean, maybe you're being objective with us saying that
No,
some
but-
of these moves like are okay. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well,
Continue,
it's-
please continue.
the thing is that even with DMC, I could acknowledge that they did certain things right. It's just that the overall product was a downgrade. It's just like in DMC2, where I consider that an overall downgrade, but there were still elements that could be put into another Devil May Cry game that are good. So for DMC, they took away Sword Storm, and Devil May Cry 3, it's basically useless. Like it's a good end there, but it's the thing is that it just stuns, and you could always use a summon sword. And,
Well, it's the
it does a lot
fastest way.
of stun too.
I'll disagree. It's the fastest way to accumulate knockback instantly stun instantly
yeah.
with Vergil.
There were elements that I thought were great from DMC, but there were also elements that I just like. For example, embedded swords. Embedded swords was put in DMC to compensate for the lack of lock on. So that way, you sort of put a marker on the enemy that you were comboing on, and that way you could teleport towards that enemy. And in Devil May Cry 4, you don't need that marker, and it's just annoying. It's sometimes enemies get in front of your way, and you teleport to the enemies that you didn't want to teleport towards. So there were those things that were good and bad from DMC. I think that teleports cancels was a good thing. The problem is that it didn't have a limit. In DMC, there was a limit, which is the embedded swords. Once you teleport, you need to embed another sword, which is it's horror in itself. But it's still a limitation that, as you guys said, with Vergil and Devil May Cry 4, it's just too easy to look cool, and not only look cool, be effective. And I think that is something. I'm not a huge fan of limitations, but when it comes to things that keep you alive, like you shouldn't be able to spam teleport and keep yourself in the air forever, and that's so yeah. There's always a limit on how free your combat system should be. That's why I had a problem with DMC, where you could just spam 2 moves and stay in the air forever. Like not even. I'm not even exaggerating. So that's the same thing with Vergil, where you could just spam roulette spell. Like I don't even know the move name, but he's staying there forever. But there were other small problems that I had. The concentration meter is a overhyped piece of shit. It's just I understand that what they were going for. They didn't want you to whiff hits, and they didn't want you to run around, because that's not something that Vergil would do.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
It still sort of punishes you, and it's an ineffective. Okay, so with the concentration meter, it's I almost think of it as the exceed meter for Nero.
Okay.
So, but the thing is that with Nero, he has normal caliber, right? And that has its own property. It's really good for knocking enemies back instantly, and you could use that really well. And then you have a level 3 caliber, which is a multi-hit property, right? And that's good to keep an enemy close to you. And it's kind of hard to explain with very subtle properties. But you see, even at the lowest level, even if you don't exceed the move, it's still good. And the same thing happens with Vergil and DMC4. You sometimes want the moves with the least concentration meter, but the thing is that you don't have an easy way to access it like what you do with Nero. You have to whiff hits intentionally, or you sometimes have to wait and just stand there doing nothing. Like taunting increases your concentration meter less than just simply standing. That's retarded.
If you let me put it this way, I think concentration meter was Capcom's attempt to make for Vergil to play like you would play Vergil in 3, except it's it naturally plays differently, but they wanted hey, let's make sure that they play it like the old Vergil, and then they just slap the concentration meter, and it's how fast. I mean, I get the idea is fine, but the thing is, it wasn't necessary. DMC3 Vergil just did just fine without this concentration meter. Instead, they're billing gameplay incentive to play like Vergil. But here it's opposite shit, and I get why, but it's just I'm not a big fan of this. Let me put it this way.
I think that how to make it's really difficult, the question to tackle, whether how do you make a character and his mechanics and his personality connect together. And it's hard to do that without limiting the player in certain ways. But I think that the number one thing that you should focus on is just focusing on the moves and try not to limit the player. So the concentration meter is annoying because if I actually want to like jump cancel, reverse attacks, right, and they don't hit, then I'm punished for it. And sometimes it's a good thing to lower your concentration meter. Sometimes it's not, but I'd rather not lower my concentration meter. And so I don't like any sort of attempt to force you to play a certain way. It's hard to make it natural. Like in Devil May Cry 3, it's almost natural to play Vergil at a high level at a certain way, but it feels too artificial. It's hard to explain, but that's my feeling. To be honest, I think that Vergil in Devil May Cry 4 has more depth. The thing is that it's just it went about it the wrong way. Like you could easily have a lot of depth with Vergil if you just cancel, like have a bunch of teleport cancels and whatnot. But the thing is that like how much are you breaking from the game? Yeah. And there's just a bunch of problems that I have. I hope to go in depth into it in the next decade that I make my
finish the video. Yeah. Any final thoughts on that, on the characters and different DMCs and stuff?
I'd say for me, I'd say I'm mediocre at Vergil, Nero, and probably Vergil. I said Vergil twice because DMC4 and
yeah, I gotcha.
Vergil. But I still appreciate all the characters. The problem is that there's just 4 Vergil really did disappointed me in certain ways. I was anticipating some level of DMC DMC fuckery, but I wasn't expecting.
But it happened.
Like, it happened and,
they never think it do, but it does. Fuck this shit.
I mean, I even with Lady and Trish, I still like seeing some really high level stuff with them. It's just that I can't get myself to enjoy something like limited that way, and to an extent, you could even see that the developers wanted. Like they even advertised Trish's lack of weapon switching. I was like, what? Why are you doing this?
What?
Stupid.
Did they?
I'm pretty sure they did. When
that makes no sense.
The news, it's like, why are you saying there's no weapon switching? Like, there's no. Okay, whatever, doesn't matter.
Let's talk about meta. Fuck this shit. The important topic. To anyone who ever played fucking DMC or watched videos, it becomes really, really obvious, really, really fast that the community itself is really separated in three parts. It's basically like West, or everybody who speaks English, and it's gonna be China and Japan. And I feel like
this is an interesting one.
This is like, yes, there is a lot to talk about different scenes and how different communities play and how different the presentation is between the community and how different are the preferences. So yeah, take it away.
Okay, so basically this is a really interesting development, and I don't know if it's like cultural, like having to do with the personalities of each of, say, players from the United States or China or Japan, and like how they normally approach work ethic, or if it has to do with just coincidentally how that game developed over time. What I mean is it could be, say, like the English players never had many resources, whereas I've done like exploring on Japanese websites, and particularly on Baidu, there are so many invaluable resources. I think like that actually ties into how the Chinese style developed. I don't mean this in a bad way, but you do see some like sameness in Chinese players, and it's simply because they have resources. Whereas like me and DK, you know, we hardly have. Well, like we've both inspired each other because we're like the only.
Autistic.
Yeah, we're like the only high-level English players, but with the Western community as a whole, there's a lot of variety because people all have to teach themselves. The Chinese community seems to be the most like technically knowledgeable, but in some sense that seems like it holds some people back because all the information is there and it's not as exploratory. The Japanese players are like a weird combination. I mean, this is generalizing, but Japanese players seem to have like an exploratory nature and kind of a technical know-how, and then like Western players, me and DK, I think we're very exploratory. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because the more I think about it, the more I think that when you were playing and when I was playing, I think we were ahead of the game. But we just I personally didn't do any combo videos because I'm a faggot. But
Yeah, yeah.
I think we were, because now we see some players discovering shit that we were talking about a long time ago, and
Right.
that's yeah.
I think as far as mid gameplay stuff, I mean, I'm not like bragging. I think this is kind of, and this is gonna sound hard, like it's not a brag, but I do think it's kind of indisputable that we're the best mid gameplay players.
This is really interesting. A branch of thought that you brought is that different communities have different cultures within them, and different communities breed different kinds of players. And okay, then there's
Like live.
pretty much actually. That's actually a really really good comparison. But okay, then there's another question. What would you say are the traits and how they compare in terms of presentation? Because, like, for example, you can make argue that if you're watching a video, like a combo video by Chinese player, you know it's gonna be like fucking 2 minute long combo and then nobody's gonna die in it and it's just gonna continue going. And on the other hand, if you're watching it like it's just so many different traits I feel like that can be attributed or small quirks to certain communities that are very very dominant. So yeah, what do you think about it?
There is so much to say about this, and it's hard to like say why it is. But yeah, the Japanese community is, it's all interesting. It is style, which is very hard to articulate. Chinese players have more of like a grandiose style. That's where I got the idea for like, 45-second to a minute combos,
That's the most interesting thing, really, because if it wasn't for the Chinese kids uploading videos on Chinese YouTube, we would have never really got this trend of making long ass combos, and it's just like really interesting how these communities exist, like correlated in a sense, and how they inspire each other is just really
Yeah,
fascinating.
like I'm copying Chinese players, and then Japanese players, certain Japanese players end up copying me, but the way I'm copying the Chinese players is different, and the way the Japanese players copy me or DK is different. So it must be cultural something. I don't know.
That's why I told you there's no way this is like coincidence. This is really a
Yeah.
culture thing. And this is like, I mean, this is a great way to mix the scene up. Because if you think about it, very few games actually have like really separate dedicated scenes that are really that different. And that different, I don't
Right.
mean like bad or worse or just different. They're just different. Different scenes prefer different things, and different scenes have different presentations and traditions and culture, and they're just different. And when one player breaks free from one scene and starts exploring the other scene, you just notice all
And
these things, and you're
and
like, it's like I can give you a really good comparison. It's like you're becoming a traveler before all the internet and shit, and you're just going to explore fucking Japan, and you come back in a fucking Japanese hat, and you're like, what the fuck? And people are like, what the fuck is this? And you're like, I don't know. This is what I found. This is what I brought home. And this is pretty much what happens when you go to fucking Nico and watch Japanese videos, and you come back to your YouTube and you post this shit, and you get comments like, what the fuck? I've never seen that before. This is really fascinating to me.
well, I started thinking, so there was really no community very early on. It was basically a bunch of individuals. Like if you look back at the original True Style
Hmm.
tournaments, obviously there's Phantom Babies, but they kind of come from everywhere. And what's funny is I'm looking at those original great players like Bria and Ramada and Mo and Flamer and etc. And you look at them, they're almost like mythological figures or something. Everyone and like everyone else has spawned off of them when they weren't a part of a community. And so now I almost think like the communities are based off of more traits of those original players. Like how the Chinese play kind of reminds me of Mo. How the Japanese play kind of reminds me of Bria. And I think me and DK play kind of more like Ramada.
I mean that makes sense because if you look at it, the community obviously builds around the players. Community is the players, and the players just share their traits, and this is how new players are being born. They're being born off of other great players, basically. So there's nothing really like mysterious or bad or like unusual about it. This is pretty normal. It's just the thing that fascinates me is how it all just mixes up in the end. Is how fascinating it is to explore it and to just how clear the difference is between cultures.
Yeah.
I just don't think there is any other game that has a scene that prominent or where you can
No.
just divide it like that, and then you can just like show to the people with experience like a video, and they're gonna be, this is Chinese player, like.
And there are also, one cool thing is there's always these like sort of quote unquote outcast players
Yes.
who have a style that's unlike anyone else, and it's hard to even really say whether it's good or not. But to really good players, it's always interesting. Like one of my favorite examples of that sort of player is Alex Shadink. Everything he does is just his own. He's a total outcast, but I love his gameplay. And I guess like Pops would be another example of that type of player.
Yeah.
Where it's just a bunch of weird shit, and they don't really take influence from anyone.
Let's say that for the meta, it's so I think that a lot of it has to like how the difference is not only the language barriers, because you can't really communicate with other players, but also like for example, if you take China, it's a pretty good example because to my knowledge, this is like apparently I remember reading a comment, I think it was from Huang or SY, that said we have a difficult time logging on to YouTube, and I think it has to do with something with the Chinese government.
Right.
And also this might sort of separate players for a moment, and then it's almost like evolution where different branches of
Right.
Homo sapiens like create different races and stuff. And so and then sooner or later they'll start meshing back together again.
That is such an interesting point. I never thought about that.
And and there's another thing as well, because not only the language barriers and technicalities like that, but also I mean there's another technicality in play, which is to my knowledge, Chinese players don't really have PlayStations or anything like that, so they have to rely on PCs, and they have to rely mostly on keyboard. And the keyboard is really, like you see it especially with Devil May Cry 4. You can't really do those star raves that Ice Tat Cream did on a Frost, where he's doing it diagonally, as perfect as he is. It's really hard to do in a controller because the analog stick is just weird. And also, so
that's a very, very good point.
The limits of the controller or the limits of the keyboard sort of dictate how the style is going to go. Not you could still imitate, like a good example is Neophi. He imitates Donguri's gameplay, but he's a keyboard player, and you sort of see something along the same lines of with Teruta's. So there's like different branches because of the limitations of just language. That would explain why Brea is more influential towards the Japanese players, and also like just players in general. But because she was more out there, and because other Chinese players are more out there, they get more notoriety, I guess. Well, that's fame. Yeah. So that could explain a lot. That's also probably the mods. Like I think spoiler AL is something that the Chinese had more than the Japanese. I don't know, but also just there's, and you see like key players influencing their own nationality usually, or their own sort of a group, because they speak the language. So Donguri is really good, and you see a lot of Japanese players take influence from Donguri because not only is he good like over here in the West, but you see, I forgot the name. It starts with an L, Larudis or something. You have AYU. You have a bunch of different players that take influence from Donguri and then just like build on top of each other. and that's sort of the same thing for the Chinese players. And as you said, there's like certain outcasts, like Huang or S-Fly is very different, like from
Right.
Isaac Cream. Even though they're from the Typhoon Shelter, they're the same group,
Yep.
like literally
I
same
know.
group. You know, just the mods you see with Japanese players, they're more vanilla like style. So they combo on finite health enemies more often than not, and the Chinese players just do infinite
Right.
health enemies, and that's how the combos sort of differentiate from each other.
That probably shaped development too. That Japanese players seem averse to a large extent. There are some PC
Yeah.
Japanese players, but they never really want to use mods, it seems, or boost enemy health.
To me, it just I guess like for outcast, I don't know if I'm an outcast because the thing is that we don't have many players in the West, so we can't really
That's very
say
true.
what is normal. We can't say what is a normal Western player style, but
Well, you're
because-
definitely unique in that you play both games at an extremely high level.
yeah, it's hard, but it's for me at least. I just try to take influence from everybody, and so I think because you, I call you the Marco Polo of Devil May Cry 3 because of how you just go into fucking Baidu and Yuku and sort of because of that it sort of mixes our styles. We explore from different
Yeah.
players that were like normally put off, and it's I think it's a shame that the language barriers exist. The same thing I think happened with Quake 3, where I remember Neptune probably knows about this. I remember this interview that Thorin I think did with
But Cypher?
Cypher. Yeah, and he was explaining how European players and Russian players were different. Like European players were more calculated and were more pattern-like, whereas the Russian players were more improvisation. And so he couldn't really break it. I think I remember him saying that
Yeah.
until a lot later. And so I think that the styles will mesh eventually. I think language barriers and how close you are to your players or idols affect a lot.
You said it earlier about Quake being the same kind of deal, and I think you nailed it again, because with me being a Quake player, obviously ex-pro Quake player, I can vouch for this. This Quake is probably the only other game that I know that has pretty much similar kind of segregation and separation and segmentation and community. And it works, funnily enough, it works in the same exact fucking way as it does in DMC. Like, people would watch from fucking States how Cooler plays ZTN and they'll be like, huh, maybe I can hold myself here. And it's just these are kind of like the things that we're discussing are pretty much the natural motions, but because most games are so underdeveloped and just so terrible, you can't really see it in the community. But with DMC, you kind of get a chance to see how this works. Okay, any final thoughts on this kind of thing?
Well, what DK said about like the limitations influencing how something develops, I think us taking influence from the Chinese, but doing or trying to do what they did on keyboard with controller is a large part of our style. Like, we can't do some stuff they do as easily on keyboard, so we sort of make up for it by going crazy in other areas.
Yeah. It's almost like I would assume that keyboard players would have a harder time to move between enemies with Trickster, with Skystar, than us controller players. And you might see something like if this person has a mechanical keyboard, you might see somebody holding their charge shots more and with keyboard player,
Right.
because you have more fingers. But yeah, it's like the limitations will eventually lead you to a different path. It's almost like I think I mentioned it to you before, but I sort of I had to switch. Like, now I could I could jump if I had default control layout. I would be able to jump cancel with X and triangle on the PS3 controller or PS4 controller. But because at the time my hands were slightly smaller, I didn't really have the reach or the sort of not only the reach, but I was also inexperienced. So I guess that I had to switch my control layout to compensate for that, and I did it through sliding. And so I would assume that the same thing, the same principle would happen to other players as well. Like maybe some players would have certain, like for you, you had difficulty doing summon swords or blistering swords because of how you jump cancel. And so if you didn't know about this, about these techniques that have already existed, you probably wouldn't have pursued that that direction. But because you did, you tried your best to do something that is almost impossible with your control layout.
Definitely. That's a good point.
Okay, let's move to the scene today. What do you think of today's DMC scene? Now, don't get me wrong, I think it's pretty fucking grim. Mainly for two reasons. I'm gonna give you the word after that, but I think there are two reasons for that. First one is it's really hard to get into it, and second thing is the trends are really different these days, and attention span of average gamer is basically not compatible with the amount of time you have to invest into DMC to begin to understand this community. So that's my take on today's community. With that being said, it is still active. There are still people that played and enjoyed, but we're just a small cult, I guess. Okay, take it away, guys. What's your take on it?
If it's ever really gonna get to a place that I'm happy with, it would involve people really coming together and breaking that language barrier, because really the only thing keeping it from being like a sort of known cult organization or right now it's so fragmented, it's just a bunch of outliers. The only thing keeping it from being like, say, a community like Shmup System 11 or something, people who talk about shmups and it's like a solid community, even though it's small, I would be happy with that. But the only way we'll even ever get to that point is, if we break that language barrier.
Yeah, personally, I never really thought about it because, I see, the thing is that I see certain players come in and I think more players are sort of trying to take it like seriously, but they stop at a certain point and they stop rather early to like today's standards.
I mean, they just hit the fucking wall. If you think that it's easy for an average person that, I don't know, plays a fucking Dark Souls game and thinks he's a fucking hotshot, and he comes to fucking DMC and gets his ass handed because he's fucking on DMD and enemies have DT and they just shit on everything. The problem is, as I've said, there's not enough attention span. People don't have this passion that we have to invest more time into this game, and without investing more time into it, you're not gonna get to its beauty. That's just the sad fact about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that sentiment. I mean, it's just me, like trying to get into Devil May Cry 4. Like the first few years was pain. It was horrible.
I mean, you say the first few years.
First.
Yeah.
It's nothing. Just the first few years,
Just think about it. Okay, no. Let's just think about it. What other modern game is played for years?
And single player game?
No, there's not such a game. Like if you look at let's take a DMC3 for example, original one, not even special edition. It's like billion years old. If you look at games no, seriously. If you look at games that are still active, the communities that are still active, most of these games are multiplayer and they're competitive shooters, fucking
or
StarCraft,
done for speedrunning.
But like none of them are single player games, or none of them encourage really any form of creativity, or these games are just like you can make an argument. You can make an argument that the games that are still active, that the games that were released like back in the DMC3 era, they were engineered to stay alive. That was their purpose. But when it comes to DMC, it was just made for people to enjoy, and they've been doing that for like fucking 10 years.
Well, if there's one draw that DMC has, it's how much of an outlier it is as far as games you can get good at. It doesn't fit neatly into any category.
pretty much.
So that's a draw, at least for new players. It's like, what the fuck? These people just try to look cool, and they've been doing it for fucking a billion years. That's crazy. I want to be part of that.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
sort of what it was for me. It just seemed like such a unique thing to be into.
the thing is, you like sound interested about it, but to other people, it's like, what the fuck? Why would you spend like 5 years practicing some
Yeah.
shit in a video game? And like,
Yeah, I would assume that your comment sections will be filled with shitters right now.
dude, I don't care. I absolutely love this community. This is obviously done for a community, so it's just like how it is. It's just the game doesn't fit within the attentions. There's a good reason why like all modern fucking shooters and games are like 10 hours long, because people, you can't grip people for more than that. And when you give them DMC where you're like getting wrecked for first year of your playing, it's
Oh
like,
no.
people are not gonna stay with it.
And it's completely ruined, like 99.999 repeating ridiculously % of video games for me. Like it's too good. It really is. When I play another game, I feel like I'm being talked down to or patronized, like really obnoxiously.
I just get for me, I just like get really bored.
Yeah.
From, like even good games. I just feel like it's hard to get into other games because I mean they're definitely fun, but I don't think I would take them as seriously. Like, even for something like a crazy game like God Hand, I know that it's a good game, or Metal Gear Rising, but I wouldn't put as much time as I would with Don't Make Me Cry just because of how fun it is.
I just feel like in most cases it's because you don't have the same degree of being able to express yourself. And in other cases, it's just this, its unique scent, its unique charm of the MC series. It's like 50-50 between these two.
If you have to play a game in a certain way, that's an immediate turn off.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you look back and like the years when games were meant to be played, it's pretty much all gone. Like most games really tell you the way. It's like I mean, in a sense it is. In pretty much every video game you just sit and press fucking buttons, but I just feel like in most games the game tells you what buttons to press, when to press them, and it already gives out the outcome of your inputs. So it's basically just a fucking one big interactive movie. I mean, there are like weird exceptions, but general trend is going there. And I mean, it's not like there's something to be said about it. I can't really put it this way, but like if you think about it, DMC is really very, very old-fashioned. It's a game from like 2000s, and there's nothing wrong with it being old-fashioned now, because that's just what it is. It's a timeless classic, okay, sure, but it's like time's changing, and everybody's changing, and like I'm not sure if there's a reason to be bitter about the fact that nobody plays DMC, or like new players don't come to DMC anymore, because that's just how the life is, you know. People move on to some new shit, and it's natural. You can't blame DMC for that, because it's like, you know, 10-year-old game. What can you do?
Well, yeah, I think like DMC3 in particular is like a monument to classic game design. It's sort of the epitome of it. The game starts and you just start playing. The cutscene doesn't really tell you what to do. You kind of see what you can do.
Yeah.
But that's great. Just being able, the first level is a room full of dudes. That's awesome. There's no ham-fisted story that you have to, you know.
Fucking walk and talk section give me cancer. For me, my view on the community is that I do wish that it was a little bit larger. I in terms of like actual players playing the game, like high level players, because there are a decent amount. I think that it's a little bit lower than I would want in terms of combo videos, but in terms of like just freestyle play, there's just really nobody now for me to like sort of take from. It's hard to explain, but it's for me the freestyle players that at this point I look up to are for Devil May Cry 4, it's Teruta's maybe 2B Power, Chaser, maybe Dongery. For DMC3, it's Blowhard. And he hasn't played in a while.
Yeah.
And 475 has made good tech that I could implement into my freestyle, but 475, I haven't seen much sort of freestyle from him, and the few sort of gameplay sort of clearing a room sections, those were really good. That's the best hand video ever, I swear to God. But it's hard to take influence now from because that since I was starting out, my main influence was always freestyle players, and I've always I still take from combo videos, but I don't take as many because then for combo videos they're usually very specific to a certain combo, and sometimes you can't do it mid gameplay because I don't know, like reverse attacks and how they work and whatnot. So I wish the community was a bit larger. That's just really it. But as far as like fans of the game who are sort of like watching people play, I think that's a pretty sizable community. I mean, for me, it feels horrible whenever I see somebody on my streams almost all the time or whatever, but I forget their names or like especially on my YouTube channel, and it's usually the reason I forget people's names is because I don't really see gameplay from them. That's the problem. But yeah, I think that this community could last.
Another 10 years.
Another 10 years just because of the gameplay depth, but it's just that it will obviously grow smaller. There are still players like coming in, like Turtle Sensei. He I was gonna say Tutu, but he's I think 2 years new, and he's pretty good. Neophi, he's incredible for the amount of time he put in. It's insane. Hep could have potential if he practices more. But yeah, it's interesting because there are some players that are trying to make it in, but it's just that it's not replacing quickly the amount of the good players that are sort of leaving or stopping.
Yeah, and the sort of the death of the CGG generals, like you can say the CGG general, sort of the death of like the crazy game generals. You can say, oh, they were shit, the threads were shit, nothing ever happened. True, but it does like create just
sort of
by being there. It's a community. It's a place for people to go and feel like they're a part of something, and I feel like that's really what's missing right now.
Yeah, I think another DMC5 could another DMC5.
Please no.
A DMC5 that is done well could attract attention to the previous game. So maybe before, like it attracts like new players to DMC5, like somebody who was never familiar with the past Devil May Cry's, and then it will probably grow its own community, and then the communities will sort of interact with each other like they did with Devil May Cry 3 and 4. And they might sort of influence each other or transfer players. Dude. So that could help, but it's not gonna. That's not really long term.
Dude, like knowing Capcom and seeing the Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition, yeah, you're gonna have to pay like $5 for manual lock-on in DMC5 or some shit like that.
I'd be really pissed off if there were hardcore microtransactions.
Like, okay, let me tell you this. I'd rather not have any other DMC game than have another shit DMC game.
Yeah, same.
So, yeah. Any closing thoughts on the topic of scene today? Like, today's DMC scene. Any final words on...
Yeah, I would say that... like for the new players that are coming in, yeah, it's fine if you stop playing. Like honestly, I understand. I understand those who are just put away from the game.
The struggle.
But if you're intending to get really good at it, just be aware that you're gonna put a lot of effort into it, and you could really do well because there are some people who just like really quick just learn. I don't know how people do that sometimes, but
sometimes it's easier if you're new to something.
Yeah, sometimes. Like you absorb, like you have your own sort of your creativity is not bound to like sort of the norms that have been put forth, sort of.
Yeah, and also it's exciting. But I mean, I guess what I would say is that I think the community exists. it's just blown to every inch of the globe.
Yeah,
It's not the right way of putting that, but it's fragmented.
Yeah.
that's a problem.
But the interest exists for the DMC2 community to actually be pretty damn sizable.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's also like as you sort of said before, it's like players will. Yeah, you never escape from this. Like as I said before, you never know how good a player is until you sort of try it sometimes. And so sometimes, like I still see comparisons between. I won't name names, but certain players, like you might see a really sort of mediocre player that is starting out and be compared to a really high level player. But it's because people don't really have the knowledge to make that comparison. It's just really hard. That's how sort of far away. It's not like in a first person shooter game where if somebody just wins the match, I mean it's obvious the scoreboard doesn't lie.
Yeah, that's a lot
Style
harder.
is just more. With style, it's just a lot more subjective.
That's kind of one of the things we talked earlier when I asked you about style and skill at technique, and if it's important to be a player yourself to understand what's happening. I think that applies here to people trying to counter others.
Because it's
I don't know.
Yeah, people's appreciation is kind of years behind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it always years behind? Come on,
that's true.
That's life.
Yeah.
You can't do anything.
I mean, there are instances where people really do appreciate what they're seeing, but I think it's more because they know the player. Like maybe I wouldn't be so known, I guess, if I didn't communicate with the players, and maybe somebody would see somebody else's gameplay as more better than me, even though they're probably bad or whatever.